Eh bien, bonjour à toutes et à tous et bienvenue à cette deuxième et
Hello,
dernière journée de
everybody, and
notre
welcome to
18e
the
Forum
second and final
international des
day
ONG.
of our 18th International
Hier,
NGO
nous avons posé
Forum.
les bases. Nous avons vu
Yesterday,
que
I
le
think we tried to
partenariat
lay
pour
the
une éducation verte
foundations.
n'est pas qu'un
We
simple
saw that the
concept, mais un
Partnership for
mouvement en
Green
marche.
Education is not just a
Nous avons
concept,
mesuré l'ambition
but
des
it's
quatre piliers.
really
Nous avons vu comment, de l'Estonie au
a
Sénégal,
movement in
l'école peut devenir un
progress. And we
laboratoire
assessed
vivant de
the
la
ambition of the four
durabilité.
pillars. We saw
Nous
how
avons pu
from
également découvrir
Estonia
le
to
volontariat
Senegal,
et des
schools
projets comme
can
Seed of
become
Change à
living
Paris,
laboratories
qui
for
étendent l'action
sustainability.
climatique au cœur des
We also
territoires.
learned about volunteering and
En résumé,
projects such as
hier nous
Seeds
avons
of
démontré
Change
que
in
l'éducation
Bari,
ne se limite
which are
pas aux
extending
murs de la classe,
climate
elle
action,
est dans la
sorry,
gouvernance de
to the heart
l'école,
of local
dans la
communities.
résilience des
So in
quartiers
short,
et dans l'engagement de la
yesterday we
jeunesse.
demonstrated that
Aujourd'hui, nous
education
passons de
is
la
not
structure
limited
au
to the
contenu et
classroom,
de la
it is in school
sensibilisation à la
governance, in
compétence.
neighborhood resilience,
Sans
and in
plus
youth
attendre, je
engagement.
vous propose que
Today,
nous
we are moving
démarrions la
from
troisième
structure to
session
content
consacrée au
and from
pilier
awareness to
Rendre vert
competence.
chaque programme
Without further
scolaire.
ado, I propose that
Ce
we begin
pilier est
the third
crucial car il
session
touche au cœur du
devoted to
métier
the pillar
d'enseignant.
of making
Que
every school
transmet-on? Comment
curriculum
l'enseignons-nous?
green. This pillar is
Nous voulons que
crucial
chaque apprenant soit un
because
acteur
it
éclairé du
touches on the
climat.
heart of the
Le changement
teaching
climatique ne vous paraissait une
profession.
option de fin de
What do
manuel.
we teach?
Il
How do
doit
we
irriguer les
teach it?
maths,
If
les
we want
sciences, la
every learner
littérature
to be
et
an
la formation
informed
professionnelle.
climate actor,
Pour
climate
modérer cette
change cannot
session,
remain
j'ai le plaisir
an option
d'accueillir
at the end of a
Gabrielle
textbook. It
Grueta.
must permeate
Gabrielle est
mathematics,
assistante
science,
projet à
literature,
l'Agence
and vocational
universitaire de la
training. I'm pleased to
francophonie,
welcome Gabriele
membre actif
Druetta
également du groupe de
as the
travail
moderator
jeunesse du
for this
comité de
session.
liaison.
Gabriele is a
Il
project
a été
assistant
clé
at
dans la
the Agence
construction de ce panel.
Universitaire de la
Gabrielle,
Francophonie, an
tu as la
active
parole.
member of the Liaison Committee's Youth Working Group. Over to you,
Bonjour, merci
Gabriele.
Cyril pour la présentation. Excellencies,
Hello.
distinguished guests, and dear colleagues, so I'm pleased to welcome you to the first panel of the second day of the 18th International Forum of NGOs in official partnership with UNESCO. So in line with the program, this panel focuses on Pillar 2 of the Green Education Partnership, so greening every curriculum. This pillar aims to integrate climate change and sustainability into education from early childhood to vocational training and lifelong skills development. It addresses curricula, teaching materials, teaching practices, and learning assessment to ensure effective climate education. I'm pleased to introduce our three panelists and warmly thank them for joining us today. I will now switch to French. Tout d'abord, nous avons le plaisir d'accueillir notre premier panéliste, Monsieur Eric
First, we are
Guillardi,
pleased to welcome our first
co-coordinateur du pilier.
panelist,
Monsieur
Mr.
Guillardi est
Eric
directeur de
Gugliardi.
recherche au CNRS et
Co-coordinator
professeur à
of the
l'Université de
pillar, Mr.
Reading.
Gugliardi is
Il
a
est
research
actuellement
director of the
président
CNRS
de
and
l'Office for
professor
Climate
at the
Education,
University of
une
Reading. He is
organisation
currently
dédiée au
president
développement
of
de
the Office
ressources
for
en
Climate
éducation au
Education,
changement
an
climatique,
organization dedicated
ainsi
to
qu'à la mise en
developing
œuvre
climate education in
d'initiatives de
schools
formation
and
professionnelle
universities.
à destination des enseignants.
Co-coordinator of the pillar, Mr. Gugliardi
Climatologue
is
de renom,
director of
ses
research
travaux de
at the
recherche portent
CNRS
sur
and
la variété
professor
du climat tropical,
as I've
le phénomène
said,
El Niño,
he's
les
also
interactions entre
a
l'océan et le climat,
renowned
ainsi que sur le changement climatique.
climatologist.
Dans ses fonctions, il a
His
contribué au
research
5e et
focuses
6e
on
rapport du GIEC.
tropical
Il est
climate
par ailleurs membre du
variability.
conseil scientifique auprès
Uh,
du
the
ministère français
uh,
de l'Éducation nationale,
the El
du
Nino
groupe
phenomenon,
d'experts sur la
ocean
littératie
climate
climatique,
interactions, and
qu'enseigne à
climate change.
l'OCDE
In
dans
these
le
roles, he
cadre des
contributed to
évaluations
the fifth
PISA,
and sixth
et siège au
IPCC
comité
reports.
d'éthique du
He's also a
CNRS.
member of the
Bienvenue,
Scientific
Monsieur Gouillardi.
Council of the French Ministry of
Ensuite, nous avons
Education,
le
the
plaisir
expert
d'accueillir
group on
professeur Jimmy
climate
Calbous.
literacy advising the
Monsieur
OECD
Calbous
in the context
est
of PISA
professeur des
assessment and
universités.
sits on
Il est
the ethics
actuellement
committee of the
recteur de l'Agence
CNRS.
universitaire de la
Welcome, Mr.
francophonie,
Giliardi.
opérateur
Next,
au
we are
sommet de
pleased
la
to welcome
francophonie pour
Professor
l'enseignement
Slim
supérieur et la recherche.
Halbus.
Le premier réseau
Professor
universitaire au
Halbus
monde,
is a university
rassemblant plus de
professor and
1000
currently
établissements
rector
membres
of
dans
the
120
Agence
pays.
Universitaire de la
Dans ses
Francophonie,
fonctions, professeur
operator of the
Calbous s'est
Francophonie
affirmé comme un
Summit
acteur
for Higher
déterminant dans la
Education and
promotion d'une
Research and the
diplomatie
world's
scientifique
leading
inclusive
university
et équitable.
network, bringing
Il était à
together more
l'origine de
than
plusieurs plaidoyers
1,000
en
member
faveur d'une
institutions
science au
in
service du développement
120
durable,
countries. In his
intégrant les
role,
points de vue de
Professor
la
Halbus has
jeunesse.
established himself as
Il
a leading
exerçait au
figure in
cours de sa
promoting
carrière de nombreuses fonctions
inclusive
de
and
responsabilité
equitable
académique et institutionnelle,
scientific diplomacy.
parmi
He has
lesquelles
been
il était
behind
directeur
several
de l'Institut
advocacy
des hautes
campaigns
études
for science
commerciales,
in the
ainsi que
service of
ministre
sustainable development,
l'enseignement supérieur
incorporating
et
the
de la
views of
recherche
young people.
scientifique
Throughout
et
his career,
ministre
he
de
has held
l'Éducation
numerous
par
positions of
intérim entre
academic and
midi de
institutional
2016 à 2019.
responsibility. These include director
Bienvenue,
of the
professeur
Institut des Hautes
Calbous.
Études Commerciales, Minister of
Enfin,
Higher
nous avons
Education
le
and
plaisir
Scientific
d'accueillir
Research,
Madame
and
Maud Segers.
acting Minister
Madame
of
Segers
Education in
est titulaire
Tunisia
d'un
from
master en
2016 to
éducation comparée et
2019. Welcome,
internationale,
Professor
ainsi que
Halbus.
d'un master et
Finally, we
d'un
are pleased
certificat
to
d'aptitude
welcome
à
Ms.
l'enseignement
Maud
secondaire
Segers.
supérieur.
Ms. Segers
Elle est
holds a
actuellement
master's
conseillère en
degree in
stratégie éducative
comparative
à
and
l'échelle
international
mondiale
education, as well as a master's degree and a certificate of aptitude for secondary education. She's currently a global education strategy advisor at VVOB, Education for Development, a Belgian organization with more than 40 years of experience in strengthening the quality of education systems in Africa, Asia, and South America. At VVOB, Maud Segers coordinates the flagship Skilling for Sustainable Futures SFSF flagship program. In this capacity, she provides technical and partnership support to programs implemented in Ecuador and Uganda, with a particular focus on integrating climate and sustainable development issues into teaching practices, professional teacher training, and national programs. Welcome, Ms. Segers. Many thanks to our three panelists for joining us today. And without further ado, I'm pleased to open this panel by giving the floor to Mr. Eric Guilliardi, President of the Office for Climate Education. The partnership's goal is for 90% of countries to have green school curricula by 2030. To support GEP member states and partners, you co-authored the Guide to Green School Curricula, which defines green education, outlines its fundamental principles, and proposes a roadmap for its implementation. To begin with, could you outline the key principles to consider when designing green curricula, followed by the steps to implement effective, inclusive green education that is adapted to national contexts? The floor is yours. Thank you very much. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
I'm going to switch to English, going back to English, if that's with you, Gabriele. And making sure, all right, do you see my presentation? Hold on. Yeah. Can you see it? Yes. Okay. Wonderful.
Yes.
Right. So thank you very much for this opportunity to share some evidence-based strategies for climate education as one of the indeed pillars of the Greening Education Partnership. So first, and I'm sure this was already covered many times, but clearly education is absolutely needed if we are to address the climate crisis, and it's really one of the core components of education for sustainable development that has been championed by UNESCO and many countries for decades now. And I like this quote of Stefania Giannini, who says that education is the most transformational climate adaptation action. Right, so there's obviously a strong demand for climate education, this was said, but little implementation. There are a number of reports that show there's very low or no integration of climate change in curricula, that a huge majority of teachers believe that it's important to teach climate change, but less than 30% feel able to teach it. And we'll go understanding how we can address it. And a very low number actually of schools implement quality climate change education. So what we know is that climate change education must build on strong science education and also active pedagogies. This is really clearly building on ESD. The science base of ESD is made even stronger in climate change education. First thing, of course, climate science is universal, but misconceptions are similar everywhere and often perpetuated by incorrect school books. What we know is that debunking misconceptions and practicing science activities is absolutely key to overcome this. And active pedagogies are more efficient, which means inquiry-based pedagogies, explicit teaching, understanding the nature of science. This has been shown, and sometimes active pedagogies are criticized, but it's not for them. It's basically because to put them into practice, we need proper professional development of teachers. Right, another thing that is really important is to go beyond the knowledge. And clearly it's not everybody, all the studies show us that it's not because you know about something that you're going to act about it. And so if the curricula, the education is based on knowledge-only approach, this creates anxiety and doesn't lead to action. This has been shown many times. So it's really important to work on pedagogical actions that will help develop self-efficacy. So again, project-based pedagogy, the role of playing games, other activities, interdimensional contact, all these really play a role to go beyond the knowledge approach. Now, of course, climate change in the classroom is not the place to change the world. Students are there to learn, so we have to be modest. And of course, projects can help self-efficacy, that each small success reinforces the positive perception that success is in this possible. And failing to implement an action will have a detrimental effect. For example, solar panels on the school are not the responsibility of the student in the school, but of the adults in the school. This is really important as part of the explicit education. Another really important part is the contextualization. The vital role of local and personally relevant climate issues to reduce the psychological distance, showing a bear on a piece of ice in most of the students worldwide who've never met and will never meet such an animal is not really helpful. This helps also motivate students because it's their everyday and what they know, their everyday context. It develops a sense of responsibility and inspire action. So this contextualization is absolutely key. And of course, providing teachers with effective professional development is at the heart of all this. We need proper resources, but also, and that's the link with the pillar 3, and this is also showing that there's different pillars of the Greening Education Partnership are really work all together, and we're working across the work groups to ensure that. So effective teacher training, now there's more and more evidence of what works, is content focused, incorporates active learning, support collaborations, uses model of effective practice, it's a hands-on activity, provide coaching, expert support for teachers that otherwise can feel a bit lonely, so networks of practice, offers feedback and reflection, and is of sustained duration. It's not just awareness with a 2-hour presentation or activity. It needs, that's the experience at the OCE, we need between 50 and 80 hours of professional development for teachers to change their professional practice to include not only the science, but also the pedagogy. Right, so as been discussed, clearly there's a really exciting international landscape for climate education. It started, the large impetus came from the Paris Agreement with the Article 12 and the Action for Climate Empowerment. And from Glasgow to Belém, really the COPs have been increasing the role of education. And for example, at the last COP, 150 countries announced that they would add education in their nationally determined contribution, the NDCs. So this is very exciting. Of course, the JEP, I won't go again into it, really the strong more than 100 countries, networking standards, pilot implementation, capacity building, very exciting to see all these actors coming together. And also another potentially huge lever that we will have is the change of the PISA evaluation, which will add climate literacy in 2029. I'll come back to that in a minute. So I want to spend maybe a minute or two on the green curriculum guidance that was mentioned by Daniele. It's one of the main actions from the pillar 2 on greening curriculum. So in this, we developed 6 concepts we call pillars of sustainability in 3 families: environmental, social, and economic. So of course, the climate science base, which is fundamental, but also that of the ecosystem and biodiversity, the resilience building and the climate justice on the social aspects, and the economic with the post-carbon economies and sustainable lifestyles. And for each of those 6 areas, we developed what were the expecting learning outcomes by age group, topic, and domain. So it really provides a guideline for many actors and countries to build their curricula. You see the different age group, and also with distinguish the cognitive, so as we were saying about the learning, the basics, but also the social emotional and the behavioral aspects, which are as important to develop our future citizens that will take decisions once they're adults. One important development is the PISA 2029 Climate Literacy Framework, which I think builds on this JEP green curriculum guidance, but also on the EU Green Comp and many other frameworks. And it's probably the latest incarnation of what are those competencies. And there are basically 4 families that, you can put different names, but they all boil down to the same thing. First is the ability to understand how the climate system works, how human action affects it, how climate change impacts people and ecosystems. Then, of course, it's the evidence-based reasoning and system thinking, understanding, making sense of data, graphicacy, all these aspects are essential. Then, of course, the capacity to evaluate evidence, information, and perspective, the different arguments, understanding the different registries of values, etc. And finally, last but not least, the agency to shape both individually and collectively a sustainable future, desirable futures. This is really, I really encourage you to go and read this. It's a short framework, provides you, I think, a good incarnation of where we're at with the thinking and from the evidence base. Right, this is just the detail. I won't go into detail, but this, for each component, we have 3 components out of the 4 competencies. For example, on this one, engaging is identifying, evaluating different type of claims about climate change, different perspective, values, and worldviews on climate change, and constructing arguments and communicating on climate change. These are things, all these things are as important to develop the skills of our future citizens. Right, I think that's all I wanted to share at this stage. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Guillardier. Je vous remercie vraiment pour votre réponse très claire.
Well,
surtout,
thank you
ça
so
nous change
much
vraiment
for
encore de ce
such
gel
a
d'aujourd'hui.
clear
Vous avez notamment
insight, which
cité,
gets really
souligné 5
into
points
the heart of
essentiels
the
pour une
matter.
éducation verte, climatique.
You
Elle doit être fondée sur des données
mentioned,
probantes. Elle doit
and
être
that was really
contextualisée, inclusive,
interesting,
modeste, surtout. Si je peux ajouter aussi,
that
soutenue au niveau
the necessity
institutionnel
for
à travers des
inclusivity,
partenariats et aussi
inclusiveness,
à
and
travers des
for
discussions qui sont
evidence, an
sa
evidence-based
mise en pratique. Et
approach.
vraiment sur ça, je voulais me tourner
And
maintenant vers
I
Monsieur
would like to
Halbous.
turn to Mr.
Du coup,
Halbous,
le soutien
Professor
institutionnel,
Halbous
aussi du
now.
soutien politique et de plaidoyer. Du coup,
I think he's
j'aimerais
the
me tourner
perfect
vers vous,
person
Monsieur
to,
Professeur Philippe Halbous,
since
vous êtes
he's
directeur de l'Agence universitaire
worked
de la
so much
francophonie.
in
Du coup,
advocacy
l'AEF inscrit son accent dans
within
des projets de
the
coopération internationale
AUF.
entre établissements supérieurs et
The
centres de
AUF is
recherche,
involved in
mais aussi dans
international
un dialogue
cooperation
institutionnel et interministériel de haut
between
niveau. Dans le contexte de
higher
transformation
education
environnementale et
institutions and
climatique,
research centers, as
deux
well as in
plaidoyers étudiants se distinguent,
high-level
l'appel de
institutional
tous
and
pour l'école de demain
interministerial
et la
dialogue.
charge pour
And
une
in the
transition
context of
énergique humaine dans
environmental and
l'enseignement
climate
supérieur en
change, 2
Europe.
student advocacy
Quel
initiatives
message
stand
fait
out.
les jeunes francophones
The
de 6
Toulouse
à 40 ans
Appeal for the
à
School
travers
of
ces
Tomorrow
plaidoyers
and the
et
Charter
comment
for
l'AEF
Energy and Climate
contribue-t-elle à
Transition in
amplifier
Higher
leur voix
Education in Europe?
auprès des
What
décideurs
key
politiques?
messages do young
La
French
parole est à
speakers
vous,
want to
Monsieur le
convey
recteur.
through these appeals? The floor is
Merci
yours.
beaucoup, merci Gabriele,
Thank
merci
you
aux
very
organisateurs
much.
de nous associer
Thank you,
à
Gabriele.
ce beau
Thank you
panel et
to
à cette
the
belle
organizers
réflexion
for
pendant 2
associating
jours
us
sur
to
un
this
sujet qui nous tient
beautiful
très à cœur et qui
panel
aujourd'hui est
and to
en
this
danger, je dirais,
conversation
par
on this
certaines
topic that is
positions
so dear to
ici
our
ou là qui
hearts.
remettent en cause
And
des
it
éléments qu'on
is under
qu'on pensait
threat
absolument
because there are people that are questioning
nécessaires et qui aujourd'hui
elements
effectivement
that we think are necessary, ideas,
remettent au premier
concepts that
plan le
we
rôle de
think are
l'école et
necessary.
de la formation
And I think this is one more
dans ce
reason to
domaine.
put
Alors,
schools and
pour répondre à
education
votre
at the
question,
heart of everything.
je vais
To
inverser, c'est-à-dire je vais me permettre d'abord de vous dire comment
I'm
on
going
travaille
to
à
take the
l'AEF,
liberty to reverse
notamment
the
sur ces questions,
questions
puis
you
ensuite
asked me.
vous faire peut-être un résumé rapide de ce
I
que
will
nos études, nos
tell you
interactions avec
about
les
our
jeunes
studies and interactions with young
sortent comme
people
argument très
in
intéressant d'ailleurs sur les positions de la jeunesse. Parce qu'il
second
il faut les
time and
écouter, ils
tell
sont
you
parfois beaucoup
about
plus
young
sensibles que nous,
people's
que notre génération, que la
positions. We
génération
have to listen to the young
précédente à
generation.
des
They often
questions
have very
qui
interesting things
aujourd'hui
to say, and they're
apparaissent
often
effectivement
even more aware
extraordinairement
and sensitive
importantes.
to these questions
Alors,
than we are.
l'Agence universitaire de la
So,
francophonie
the
aborde la
AUF
question de l'éducation et de l'enseignement supérieur en général avec une approche très systémique. En fait,
takes a very
parler
systemic
avec tous
approach.
les acteurs.
We
Nous
consider
avons
that
deux
we
niveaux
have to talk with
d'intervention, un
all
niveau
stakeholders.
institutionnel et un
There
niveau
are
individuel.
2 levels of
Au niveau
action,
institutionnel,
institutional
c'est évidemment les
and
ministères, les universités, les centres de recherche,
personal.
les
So,
partenaires
institutions, of
comme
course, all our
l'UNESCO.
institutional
Et là, il
partners,
s'agit plutôt
research
des approches de
institutes,
plaidoyer,
as well as
notamment des
UNESCO
plaidoyers politiques,
and
justement,
others. So, this is an advocacy
des
work,
politiques publiques,
political
les approches
advocacy
méthodologiques,
work,
et puis
public
l'accompagnement
policy,
aux réformes des systèmes
methodologies,
éducatifs et
and
universitaires.
support reforms
Je
to
vous donne quelques
the
exemples
school
très
system,
rapidement
education
qui
system, and higher
touchent
education system.
au
Let me
sujet
give you a
qui
few
nous intéresse aujourd'hui. Par
examples
exemple, au niveau
that that are relevant to what we're talking about today. At a ministerial level, we were able to put together a document which is entitled a Manifesto for Climate Education in French-speaking countries. It's been co-signed by many French-speaking countries. It is a mapping exercise of the priorities of the scientific community. And amongst these priorities, you'll find the sustainable development, of course, and green education. The higher education ministers within the French-speaking community have set up an annual meeting, a yearly meeting of ministers coming from the four corners of the world, and the only yearly meeting that they have is the ministerial conference. That makes it possible to have a very cross-cutting approach in terms of scientific cooperation on these matters. So lots of work conducted on these matters. But as you said, we have over 1,000 universities and research institutes that are member of the AUF, and we're very proud of that. So the raison d'être of that world network is to make it possible to really mobilize all the knowledge and competences within these universities and research institutes. There's a third level, still within the institutional level, which is the level of our partners. Of course, first and foremost, UNESCO, this major institution bringing us together today. We signed a beautiful strategic agreement between the AUF and UNESCO last year. And at the end of the day, what this agreement is about is it's the fruit of years and years of cooperation in the field. Together with UNESCO, we work all around the world with very hands-on projects, notably supporting countries in the global south to support them in the reform of their education system. The AUF and UNESCO work hand in hand in the field, and this is escalated to top management. And of course, we are amongst the NGOs that are part of the World Coalition for Education, and our European subsidiary that you are part of, dear Gabriele, and member of as a member of the liaison committee of NGO in official partnership with UNESCO. So this is what I wanted to say about institutional aspects. But what of individual aspects? We want to really give a boost to training, and that is through work with teachers, educators, and learners. So students and researchers, we want to give a boost to networking. We want to really boost that networking on all the issues where we want to really have hands-on actions. So we really try to make the most distinguished experts around the world to be more cooperating one another. With regards to students, we want to in their ideas, listen to their difficulties. We've realized that there was a lack of knowledge of the education system, of the international cooperation tools, and the studies we've conducted have pushed us to try and help young people to get more organized. When they want to set up a club, for example, we've called it CLEF, Leader Club in French-speaking students. It's become a huge society, a huge club, and we turned it into an association. It's now the International Association of CLEFs, of those clubs, so that we could make sure that the governance was transparent. So thousands of students, and we support them in their thematic reflections. They're free to choose what they want to tackle first, but I can tell you that after 3 years of working with them, there are issues that stand out because they actually can choose to do whatever they like. But 3 issues stand out. The crucial question of entrepreneurship and employability, their professional future, and sustainable development. Those are the 2 issues that really stand out. And that is interesting to note compared with previous generations. So, Gabriele, you mentioned 2 examples. I'd like to pick up on that. We want to help young people to express what they think, and we want to help them really put it together in documents so as to help change the system. In Sofia, there was about 50 leaders that worked on a charter on climate and energy in higher education. And in 2024, it was in Toulouse, and we broadened the horizon. We had students coming from all around the world, and with a very democratic approach. It's very important for us, so I want to insist on this. 200 clubs that were distributed over dozens of countries. All the clubs in one country elect 1 national representatives, and 65 or 70 national representatives that have been elected to represent their clubs, and that they have worked for 3 days in total immersion, so brainstorming. And the brainstorming within each club went on for 4 months, and there was no pressure on them. We asked them, okay, imagine you have a magic wand. What would the perfect school look like for you? So they brainstormed for 4 months, and then they continued that brainstorming exercise in immersion, and they drafted the appeal, the Toulouse appeal, the Toulouse call for action. You can download it for free on the AUF website. It's really interesting. It tells you what young people think, what their dreams, their hopes, but also their concerns are. So to give you the gist of the content, they talk about digital transformation. For them, it's absolutely essential. Developing digital competencies, AI, etc. They also tell us about jobs, careers, what they're going to do after university. Will their skills be adapted, and how can they better make them fit with the needs in the new society? And the third topic that really got us thinking, they talked a lot about what it means to live as a community, and I'm talking young people telling us about that, and that really caught us by surprise, because they said, can we still talk about being civic-minded individuals? Can we talk about solidarity faced with the challenges of today's world? And fourth type of transition, they talked a lot about inclusiveness, how to define the notion of quality of education when you talk about countries that have very diverse levels of development. And the last transition is climate transition, building resilience faced with climate change and embedding that in the curricula. But to wrap up this first part of my presentation and the answer to your question, I think there are 3 takeaway messages that young people have really hammered in. First and foremost, they said, we young people want to be involved. We want to be at the heart of the process. We want to be in the lead. We don't want to be consumers, between inverted commas, of this approach. We, young people, want students to be more involved. Associations, they really want to act as much as possible and be more visible. They tell us that they need more partnerships and strengthen partnerships at the level of the schools. They want their schools and universities to open the doors to civil society so that teachers, educators, and students do not keep themselves to themselves. This is very important for them. And also the participation of learners in governance. And they want decision makers to listen up before they make decisions. So first message, we want to be more involved and involve us, mobilize us in your decision-making process. Second main message from the young generation, schools should transform themselves, bringing around everybody around the table. They talk to us about their teachers and educators that are not very much aware, not as aware as they are about these questions. So how can these educators have an advocacy work and action if they're not aware that it's important? So young people are very much aware that teachers and educators need to develop their skills so as to really be able to tackle these issues. And in terms of the curricula, what young people tell us is that rather than having one or two modules here or there to raise awareness, they would like to have more action-driven or action-oriented modules. Modules that tell us more about what it is we can do. So more hands-on modules and fewer theoretical. The theories are useful, but it's no longer enough. They want to take action and no longer be passive. And they also tell us that universities have to set an example, and there's also advocacy emerging on the fact that they really have to include civil society. So first message, involve us more. We want to be really involved. We don't want to do it single-handed or in isolation. We want people around us, educators and others, to have the same awareness. And third message, let's go beyond beautiful speeches and walk the walk, which is in line with their thirst for involvement. Why would there not be a form of certification for greener universities, for example? So lots of discussions on this, on how to promote green transition strategies. So schools and universities that highlight and these strategies could be promoted. And that won't come as a surprise to you. Young people tell us about money. Money is of the essence throughout these crises. But what's important, what's interesting to note, and which brings us back to how civic-minded these young people are. They say, let's no longer separate solidarity from financing. If there is no distribution of wealth, sharing of wealth, so that we can save the planet as a collective effort, we can't have it that the planet separates or is divided between the better off and the worse off. So what's interesting is that they really highlight the importance of solidarity for to build a common future. So we learn a lot from listening to them, and we try to support them. That's our role.
Well, thank you very much for your reply. Thank you very much for, or rather for your presentation. Thank you very much as well for the strong messages that you imparted. If I were to summarize, we can say that the youth today just tell us what they want to do, and they want to be active in the future. That would be a quick summary. Now, I'm going to give the floor to Maud Zegers. She will give us a concrete grassroots level example, and she's going to show us what we can implement as far as climate change education is concerned. So with a world leader at VVOB, VVOB has been supporting in that aspect for many years. Could you please tell us what is your approach to integrate education to climate change? What are the purposes and objectives, and also the impacts you observed on teachers, learners, and local communities? You have the floor. Thank you very much.
So I'll explain VVOB's approach using examples from our work in two of our partner countries, Ecuador and South Africa. In South Africa, we started to work on climate education and education for sustainable development in 2019 through the Keep It Cool project. And in Ecuador, we started at the end of 24 through Cambiar. We are not seeing the slides, but that's also okay. Perfect, thank you. So by and large, I would say that VVOB uses the 10-step approach that is promoted by the Greening Education Partnership in the Greening Curriculum Guidance, so the guidance note produced by Pillar 2. In reality, I would say that the journey is not quite as linear as we might think. So some steps happen in a different order, or some of the steps can be clustered. But the description in the guidance of that process is quite a helpful lens, and it has helped us think through and improve our approach. We indeed start, as is suggested by that guidance note as well, with a review of existing policies to find entry points for greening the curriculum. In Ecuador, the Plan Natura of the Ministry of Education was critical in that. It's a plan that promotes education for sustainable development as a fundamental element of quality education. And its objective is to promote the participation of the educational community in designing solutions for climate and ecological challenges at the local level. And in South Africa, it's the curriculum assessment policy statements that have already integrated or included climate change and sustainability in subjects from grades 1 to 12. So those were for us perfect entry points found in those countries. That review, in reality, we carry it out together with our government partners, who are the first stakeholders that VVOB engages in this process, specifically the Ministry of Education in Ecuador and the Department of Basic Education in South Africa. In both countries, we have also brought on board the ministry or the department that is responsible for environment, and in Ecuador also the Ministry of Agriculture, because the focus of Cambiar is on greening agricultural education and training. In addition, we also engage with professional development providers, such as the University of the Americas and Fundisa for Change, which is a consortium of 9 universities in South Africa, because they already have expertise on climate education and ESD. And then there are other more technical partners, I would say, that join this process, like FAO in Ecuador or Green Matter in South Africa. And then together with these partners, we choose the preferred curriculum strategy. And that also includes for us reflecting on which pedagogical approaches will be promoted. In Ecuador, so 2 different approaches you will see here. So in Ecuador, we really chose a subject approach with agriculture as the so-called carrier subjects. So all the technical subjects of the agriculture family are being greened, and that is being done through project-based learning and by also infusing content knowledge on climate change. In South Africa, we started with a cross-curricular approach. We can with an approach that promotes, again, a type of project-based learning, which is called curriculum activated change projects in the South African context. in the initial phase, we focused on teachers from grade 7 to 9. And in our current phase, we are really also deepening this with a carrier subject that is called life orientation in grade 8. Of course, we always start from the official, the existing national curriculum. We are not going to do wholesale curriculum reforms. Together with our partners, we then develop teaching and learning support materials that are curriculum aligned. We pilot them together with teachers, so teachers test the materials in their classrooms before they are finalized and then approved. So even in that piloting, there is already some small scale teacher training happening as well. And for those who are interested, the QR code brings you to a whole set of TLSM that was developed in South Africa. There we already have a package of 8 materials that was developed, tested together with Fundisa for Change and Green Matter. The Department for Basic Education has approved it. And the assessment of those projects, of the change project, is now also included in the official assessment system, which involves an assessment at the end of term 3 of the school year. In Ecuador, we are at a little bit of an earlier stage, but 83 teachers from the Andes region are also involved in a small-scale blended course on project-based learning. Local community actors such as associations of agroecological farmers take an active role in that course, specifically when it comes to supporting teachers in identifying real-world challenges related to agriculture, climate change, and environmental sustainability that then ultimately teachers and students will take up through project-based learning. And in partnership with the Office for Climate Climate Education, we are also contextualizing some of the materials in the OCE arsenal to make sure that scientifically correct knowledge about, for instance, soils and climate change is being built. And then I'm glad to hear that students are calling for teacher professional development, and we couldn't agree more to see those teachers, those practices and the TLSM being taken up in as many classrooms as possible. We invest in quality continuous professional development, which is also then a key channel through which teaching materials are being disseminated. There too, we work through the existing system so that the professional development is properly approved. Teachers can obtain so-called CPD points and credits for successful completion. And then again, depending on the context, that package looks a little bit different. In South Africa, it's a combination of online courses available through the DBE online learning platform and in-person professional communities of teachers across schools. And in Ecuador, VVOB has also developed a set of online courses offered through the Ministry of Education's Me Capacito platform. And we are then also piloting that blended course. And it's really through the CPD that teachers are motivated and supported to infuse climate change and environmental sustainability in the existing curriculum. And so for us, the teachers are really the change agents here. They are the ones who are practically greening the curriculum through their teaching and the learning that they organize. Importantly, of course, we want to see that local relevance. And in fact, that is also the action-based or the action-oriented methodology of project-based learning is exactly what we see, and it makes the enthusiasm of teachers and students quite high. So how do we see that? First of all, we see very high completion and success rates in the online courses, which is not an easy thing to achieve. And we see a serious uptick in the number of teachers that are actually implementing thanks to the courses. So in South Africa, for example, we see before the professional development, about 25% of schools are doing project-based learning related to climate change or environmental sustainability. After the professional development, that rises to 90%. So it's really the support to teachers and the materials and the action-oriented aspect of project-based learning that causes this motivation and then also bigger implementation, of course. And in Ecuador, we are seeing similar things evolving. So there, of course, we are at an earlier stage, but we have already created, together with the Ministry of Education, a special category around agriculture and climate change in what is called the Feria Nacional CREA. It's an innovation fair for teachers and students, where students present or showcase their results from project-based learning every year. And this year, or in 2025, we had an agriculture and climate change category for the first time, and already we had more than 35 submissions. So yeah, when the presentations are shared, you can find some videos of these projects, which are quite exciting.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Segers.
Thank you very much, Madame Zegers. That was a very interesting presentation, and I would like to thank you for presenting those very interesting projects, those two projects in two countries. So they were very concrete, those in Ecuador and South Africa. What I would say about your presentation as a summary is that your projects are co-created, adapted to the local situation, and you have a strong strategy based on partnerships. Also, they follow very specific targets, and that was good to hear. Now, without further ado, because we're lagging slightly behind, I'm gonna give the floor to Mr. Guillabir. He's the president of the Office for Committed Education, and I have a question for you. You are the president of the office, and I wanted to know your take on the role of civil society and NGOs. How do you think this partnership is going to evolve in the future, as well as a partnership with UNESCO? So if you could please respect the 4 minutes allocated to you, that'd be great. Thank you very much.
Well, basically, I think the role of NGOs is absolutely central in the Greening Education Partnership. If you look at the missions of the JEP, which is networking, best practice exchange, capacity building, standards and guidance documents for each pillar and the evidence base, pilot implementation projects, support for capacity building. Capacity building is both the support, but also webinars, and the monitoring through the MIS and the dashboard. I think NGOs are key actors for each of those missions. They will provide the local context to do both the capacity building, to go beyond the school, as was rightly mentioned before. It's important that to work in the school and its environment, so to provide again the youth with a systemic vision of the issues, not a narrow one, or just having a disconnect between what happens in the school and what happens outside. Of course, the contextualization we saw was essential, and the co-construction is better done with NGOs or local actors. This is really important. Of course, working with the educators, I think here we have to, when we say we have to be modest, at the same time, we have to be reminding that the professionals at school, the teachers, as was just mentioned by Maud as well, that and NGOs, when they intervene in the classroom, should work in co-construction. The teachers shouldn't leave the classroom to the NGO or vice versa. They need to work together, really bringing their expertise. Of course, NGOs usually have agility, fundraising capacities that ministries of education will not necessarily have, the school will not necessarily have, so they can work together and can work together using those strengths. And also the link with the ministries. In many of those NGOs have links with ministries. This was nicely shown just a minute ago by Maud. And just to finish my few minutes, I want to give you the example of the ARISE project that is led by the Office for Climate Education in 3 countries in Africa. And you see that. So this is a large project for 4 years, working with the Development Bank, AFD, but also the partnership with NGOs is absolutely essential and the heart of the project. And this was a project 2 years in the making, because we have to identify the local partners that would share the values and really provide capacity building for the local actors, co-constructing the resources, the professional development of teachers. They know the local ground, and also having the link with the ministry. So I think this is to me, in a few minutes, what I would really I would stress the role of these NGOs in the Greening Education Partnership.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Guillardi, pour votre réponse très claire
Thank you
et
very
surtout
much,
concise.
Mr.
C'était
Guillardi,
très
for
intéressant et
your
surtout,
clear and
si je dois retenir
concise
quelques
answer. That was
éléments
very
de votre
interesting.
réponse, je dirais
If I were
que
to
il faut
summarize,
que du coup les ONG jouent
I
un
would
rôle,
say that
enfin, les ONG sont
NGO
importantes dans ce contexte parce
obviously
qu'ils amènent le
play
contexte
a
local,
central role
ils,
because they
ils amènent
help
aussi la communauté
contextualize,
autour
they bring
de
the
l'école
local
en fait.
context,
Et
and
surtout, c'est très
also they
important
bring
pour tous
on
ceux
board the entire
qui
community
relèvent des
in order
plaidoyers
to work hand
institutionnels
in
avec le
hand
ministère,
with
surtout pour
the
intégrer les,
teachers
on peut dire
and
les change makers,
education
pour
specialists.
intégrer les
They are
consommateurs
part of
dans
the
les
change
écoles.
makers in
Merci
order
encore.
to integrate those
Maintenant, je
topics
voulais me
in the
tourner vers
schools, but also
professeur Slim Kalbous,
within the
recteur de
community.
l'Agence
Now, I'm
universitaire de
going
la
to give the
francophonie.
floor to Slim
En fait,
Karbus
vous avez présenté tout à l'heure
and
la
ask
double mission
a
de l'agence,
question
notamment donc,
to
agence exécutive
him.
et aussi réseau
You
universitaire,
presented the
qui
work
joue un
carried
rôle
out
clé dans
by
l'innovation
the
pédagogique.
AUF, which
Et je
plays
voulais savoir
a
si vous
significant
avez
role in pedagogical
des
innovation.
exemples
And
concrets
I
de programmes et
wanted to
instruments ou
know if you
initiatives
have concrete examples of
que
programs
des établissements de
or
l'AUF
potentially
mettent en place pour
initiatives
intégrer
within
l'éducation au
your
développement durable
institutions
et
in
surtout
order to
toujours dans
integrate
l'idée de la question
education
que
to
je posais à Monsieur
sustainable
Guillardi,
development. Again, in line with
comment le partenariat
my
avec
last
l'UNESCO
question, I'd
permettrait-il de
like to
renforcer
have your
l'efficacité, la
take
visibilité et la
on
portée de ces
how
initiatives
the
au niveau
partnership with
national et
UNESCO
international?
could
La
enhance the
parole est à vous,
effectiveness
Monsieur
and
le recteur.
visibility of these initiatives at both national
Merci
and
beaucoup.
international
Oui,
levels.
alors
You have
les
the
instruments
floor.
sont nombreux. Pour
Well,
développer,
there are
puisque
many
nous sommes quand même présents dans
instruments,
120 pays,
obviously,
et donc
because we are
il faut
present in
avoir
no less
des
than
approches à la fois
120 countries.
standardisantes pour un certain
So
nombre
we need
de grandes orientations, mais
standardized
aussi très adaptées
approaches and have
localement en fonction de l'environnement de chaque
significant
pays,
and have
de chaque région, de chaque nation.
orientations, if you
Mais
will,
je dirais qu'il y
but
a
also we need
trois
to
grandes composantes
customize
en
this
termes de
by
méthode.
country.
La
Now, I
première,
would
c'est
say that there are
prédominante, c'est
three
l'ADN même de
elements to our
l'AUF,
method.
c'est
The first
la
one is part of
mobilisation
our
des
DNA.
compétences
We need
locales
to
en réseau.
leverage
Euh,
all the
Nous avons une
knowledge and
quarantaine de
skill sets
réseaux
that we have
que nous
by
soutenons à
activating our
l'AUF. Les réseaux
networks.
sont
We have some
institutionnels, donc
40
c'est entre
networks. I'm talking
20
about
jusqu'à 100
institutional
universités
networks.
qui
So they
participent de
are
ces
comprising
universités et centres de
20
recherche
to
notamment qui
100
participent à ces réseaux-là.
universities or
Et je
research centers
citerai
that
les
are
deux
part
derniers réseaux que
of
nous
those
avons créés en
networks.
lien
And the
direct
two last
avec
networks
le
which we
sujet qui nous
created
réunit aujourd'hui.
in
C'était
direct
deux
relation,
réseaux
by
créés
the
en
way, with
2023,
the
faisant
topic of
maintenant
interest. Two networks
un an
we
et
were
demi.
created in
Le premier dans la
2024, so
formation et la
1.5 years
recherche.
ago.
Nous avons
The first
lancé le
network
réseau
has to do
universitaire
with
francophone pour
innovation and
l'innovation
research.
pédagogique
This is
et les
the
sciences de l'éducation,
Francophone network
justement.
for
Et on a
educational
mis en place donc
sciences.
une réflexion
And
sur
in
quelles sont
this
les innovations
network,
qui doivent
we
accompagner la
conduct
transformation de
a
l'école aujourd'hui
reflection
et bien
on
entendu les
how
sujets
we should
qui nous
change the
préoccupent
way
aujourd'hui
we
sont
teach,
au centre et
especially
parmi les
around
sujets les
climate
plus
change and all the
demandés.
topics
Nous
that
avons
are
aussi des
of
réseaux
interest
plus
to
sur la
us.
question de la
We
gouvernance.
also have
Et en
networks
2024
on
également, nous avons
governance.
lancé le
In
réseau des universités
2024, we
francophones
also
responsables et
launched the
inclusives. C'est un peu en
network
réponse
of
à la critique que
inclusive and
la jeunesse nous faisait sur le fait
responsible
que
Francophone
les campus
universities,
eux-mêmes
which
doivent
in
être
a
un
way
exemple
is our
dans leur
answer
gestion,
to the
dans leur gouvernance
criticism
pour
that
pouvoir
we've heard
enseigner
from students
ces principes.
um,
Et donc, nous avons
on
aujourd'hui
how we
lancé
should be
un
more
réseau qui
responsible and
réfléchit
inclusive.
justement
So, in
sur
order
les
to
moyens
think
pour
about
rendre
how we can
nos
do
campus
better,
plus
what could
inclusifs.
be the
Alors,
means
ça, c'est
in
la
order
première,
to make
la
our
première méthode.
campuses
Donc,
more
mobilisation
inclusive.
d'expertise, mise
So,
en
this
un
is
réseau au niveau
our
international,
first
transversalité de l'approche
approach,
et
if you will.
adaptation
We try to
aux
be cross-cutting, we try to adapt
spécificités locales.
to the
Le
local
deuxième effet
specificities,
qu'on
and
travaille,
we
c'est
try to
on
leverage
travaille
our
beaucoup sur la
networks.
négociation
Our
internationale
second
parce qu'il y a beaucoup
method,
de financements de gré
we
à gré, mais
do
c'est pas
a
facile
lot
de les avoir parce que tout le monde négocie, il y a la rareté des ressources aujourd'hui. Et donc,
negotiation
on fait
in
beaucoup de
order to
travail
get
sur prendre
funding.
avec les
So we do a
compétences
lot
qui sont
of
dans nos
advocacy
réseaux et avec les
work
compétences internes
with the
à
skills that we
l'administration pour
have
aller
in our
chercher des fonds
networks, but also
sur des
with our
grands bailleurs.
in-house
Alors, je
expertise.
citerai
We
un
try
exemple
and
avec l'Agence
receive
française de
funds
développement,
and
l'AFD en France. On a un
find
projet qui s'appelle
funds.
Apprendre.
With
C'est un
the
gros projet
AUF, we
structurant
have
de
a
plus de 30 millions
large
d'euros sur
structuring
25 pays.
project
Et ce
entitled
projet a pour
Apprendre,
rôle
learning.
d'accompagner ces
So these
25 pays
programs will
d'Afrique
encompass
à
25
accompagner
African countries. And we want to help those 25 countries change change their educational program. So we're not providing them with an off-the-shelf solution, but rather we try to talk with them. We start with a diagnosis. We try to realize what they need to do, and together with those contact persons, we try to implement the best way to change their educational system. We have a nice project with the World Bank. It's a specific project in Burundi. It's entitled Sunshine in Burundi, and what we want to do is train people in renewable energies. Well, they don't like sun in Burundi, but what they lack is the right expertise to tap into that potential. So very nice project. We have other stakeholders. Kicks Africa 2030. This is also co-funded by Canada, the World Bank. So it's a wide international project. And so this project, which will be implemented in 20 African countries, tries to focus on gender equality, fight against school dropouts, how you can continue schooling in situation of conflicts. So very topical questions. And as I said, we have many funding thanks to our fund leveraging. So this is the second part to our approach. And then the third part is obviously we compete in a competitive call for projects. Now we maximize our the possibility for us to get this funding by helping the projects to be kickstarted. So we start by a small funding, and once the project is more mature, we try to get more funds, for example, for European funds, or with competitive projects. Gabrielle, you know, one of the last we were successful with, Terrascape, is a project for Côte d'Ivoire and Cameroon. And in this very nice project, we will make it possible for about 10 universities of those countries to get master's program and master's program in better management for natural disasters. So as you can see, we are working, we're supporting those projects, and sometimes we have very specific projects that we support and meet the needs of one or multiple countries. Now, in all that work, quite often, UNESCO, as I said in my introduction, is one of our main partners. Since 2025, I would say is a turning point when we decided to really institutionalize this partnership between UNESCO and AUF. We now have a mixed steering committee, thanks to which we really institutionalize this partnership in order to have more complementarity and in order to make quicker progress. So that would be my answer to your question. Thank you very much for this very clear answer. And you really demonstrated very well the different synergies that there are in between all institutions. Now, my last questions would be for Maud Zegers, and I would like to ask you, what is again for you the partnership between local communities and territorial institutions, and how do you see the Greening Education Partnership and UNESCO could contribute to enhancing the effectiveness, reach, and sustainability of these initiatives? Now that we're a bit late, so if you don't mind, Madame Zegers, I see also a question from the public, and I'm going to add it to this first question. And I would like to, you have an expertise from a grassroots level. And so could you tell us, how can you translate short-term, smaller projects in longer, more sustainable projects? So you have the floor for those two questions.
Answer as well. And first of all, as an NGO member, encourage others, other NGOs as well to join. For us, the partnership has been quite important in terms, well, you already heard it, that I referred to the guidelines and being involved also in the development of some of these guidance documents. It really helps you improve your thinking and improve your implementation. So that is always very welcome, of course. The fact that the partnership brings together multiple stakeholders, actors working on the same thematics. You find allies, co-implementing partners, and new partnerships, which is phenomenal. And of course, the very important advocacy work of the partnership, the presence of the high-level engagement with ministers and annually at the COPs, to continue to expand the engagement of member states and to ensure that climate education and education for sustainability get on the agenda still in many cases, but also stay there, because that is a constant effort. And then to respond to the question from the audience, and it's an excellent one, because often we stay quite small in our small scale implementation. So for VVOB, the pathway to scale for us is really through teacher professional development. And then, of course, teacher professional development can also stay small scale. So for us, really working together with the Ministry of Education and one or several, mostly several professional development providers that are accredited, recognized, high quality is absolutely crucial. And so strengthening those systems really, and infusing in systems that already exist and can take innovations to scale is for us the way to go, I would say.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Segers. Et vraiment, c'est très intéressant parce qu'en
Thank
plus,
you
c'est
very
partie
much
de
for
la
your
discussion de hier
answer.
que
So,
comment
well,
institutionnaliser
was
les partenariats
a follow-up
de
to the
l'éducation pour changement
conversation we
climatique
had
pour
yesterday
passer
when we
d'un
talked
gestion
about
de quelques
learning
projets à
about
vraiment
climate
gestion
change, how
systémique
you
et
can
plus
start
institutionnalisée.
from a small
Je vais remercier
project and then
aussi
have
le
something that
public
is more
pour vos questions.
systemic.
Malheureusement, on n'a
I
pas
would
pu
like
prendre
to thank the
plusieurs
public
questions,
for their questions.
mais je vous invite
Unfortunately, we
à
couldn't
suivre les
address
échanges via
many
le
of
chat
them,
par mail. Je sais
but
que
I
plusieurs
do encourage you to continue this
plusieurs membres du
conversation
public
in
ont
the
demandé
chat. A
contact mail.
number of participants asked
Ils
your
vont être
email
partagés
address,
si jamais
or
ils le
your email
souhaitent.
addresses
Et avant de
rather,
passer à la
and
prochaine
so they will be
session,
shared with
et
them
pour qu'on
if
close
you don't
ce
mind, so
panel,
that
je
they
voudrais
can
vraiment
send
avoir des
their
réponses très
questions
courtes
directly to
de
you.
chacun de
Now,
nos panélistes
before we wrap
pour conclure cette
this
question. Du coup, je
panel,
voulais vous
I would like to
demander
have
quel
very
message clé
short
souhaiterez-vous
answers
adresser à l'ensemble
by
des
the
parties
different
prenantes
participants.
engagées en faveur de
What would
l'éducation
be
verte?
the key
Monsieur
messages
Guillardi?
that you get? Mr. Guillardi,
Well, thank you,
if
Danielle.
you
Merci beaucoup.
don't mind. Thank you very
For me, as
much,
I said, I think it's
Gabrielle.
exciting times for climate education with the Greening Education Partnership, PISA, the role of NGOs. There are many things happening. I want to stress the central role of science education, which is really important, but also the social and emotional skills that need to be developed in our youth through active pedagogies, moving from anxiety to agency and the role of self-efficacy. I think this is really important. Of course, it has to be there in the curricula, but in all disciplines, we have to provide a systemic view for all our youth. And here the school and community approach, the whole school approach, the role of NGOs is absolutely essential. Teachers are the heart of the engine, clearly. They need quality professional development, they need quality education material, they need field support. And I think both for the teacher and the students, this climate and environmental education is there to nurture a sense of purpose and the capacity to imagine and build a better future for all. I think this is really what we're doing. This futures literacy is absolutely essential. This requires political will, piloting, research, and evaluation for country scale impact. And we're discussing impact. I'm very proud about what the OCE has been doing over the last 8 years. We've reached 150,000 teachers with that proper training, reaching close to 6 million students already, and counting, of course, when you train teachers. So I think we have the ways to scale by empowering and doing capacity building for the teachers and the education system. So thank you again for this great discussion.
Merci beaucoup. Professeur Calbous, votre message
Thank you very
final de
much.
ce panel.
Professor Halbus, your final message.
Message final sans être trop long, mais
Well,
peut-être
I don't want to
deux
be
idées
too
clés
long, but maybe two
qui me
key
semblent être intéressantes à
ideas
garder en tête. C'est
that
d'abord
seem to
vraiment
me
l'approche
interesting to bear in mind.
systémique des choses.
First,
Nous
a
avons
systemic
beaucoup d'acteurs.
approach. We have many
Nous avons la question de
stakeholders.
du plaidoyer politique.
There's the
Nous avons la
question of
question de la
political
formation des formateurs que nous avons
advocacy,
beaucoup
the question
évoquée,
of
la
training the
question
trainers
pédagogique et
that we've
recherche, d'ailleurs, qui sont liées.
touched upon
Et puis
recurrently, the
surtout,
question of
l'accompagnement des
teaching,
jeunes
pedagogy,
pour
and research, and the
l'appropriation
question of
de
supporting
ces
young
questions
people so as to really
d'éducation.
take ownership of
Si
these
aujourd'hui on a des
questions
politiques
of climate
qui remettent en
education.
cause
So,
des
if
évidences
we have now,
relatives
you
au
know,
climat, relatives
politicians
à
and
ces questions
policymakers
de
who,
survie,
for some of
c'est
them,
qu'on n'a pas eu
question
cette
the
sensibilisation dans l'enfance,
reality
à
of
l'école,
climate change, is
quelques
because
années dans le passé.
they
Donc
themselves were
l'approche vraiment
not made
systémique est
aware
importante.
of
Et
climate
puis
change in the
l'approche
past at
adaptative.
school.
Il est très
So this is
important de
really
pouvoir
important, and
adapter nos méthodes
adaptation is
pour que
very
des pays
important.
qui n'ont
We
pas le
need to
même niveau
adapt
de
our
développement,
methods
pas
so
le même
that
niveau
countries that
de
do
catastrophe,
not have the
n'ont
same
pas le
level
même
of
niveau
development, the same
économique,
level
n'ont
of
pas le même
natural
niveau
disasters, the
de
same
sensibilisation,
level of
puissent
economic
suivre la
development, the
tendance
same
générale et
level of
chacun à son rythme
awareness,
et avec
can
ses
all take
capacités. Il
part
est très important
at their own
que, et
pace
si l'approche
and with their
adaptative
own
et l'approche
capacities.
systémique
And if
vont
the
de pair, qu'il
adaptive
y aura une
approach and the systemic
intériorisation de la
approach go
question
hand in
verte,
hand,
et l'éducation verte
then
ne serait plus un sujet, elle
green
serait
education
naturelle, et
would
ça
no
sera la
longer
norme
be
que tout le monde
an
suivra dans les
issue, but
prochains
a
jours.
reality
Voilà.
for all.
Merci
And
beaucoup, Monsieur le
thank you
Recteur,
so
pour
much,
vos paroles très inspirantes. Et pour
Professor,
conclure,
for
Madame
these very
Segers,
inspiring
votre message clé à la fin de ce
words.
panel.
Ms. Segers, your final
Thank you.
message?
So all good things come in three. So I'm going to say three things. First of all, be each other's allies. Because we often get caught in all kinds of discussions about differences between environmental education, climate education, education for sustainable development. But what connects us is a lot more important. And certainly the partnership is a great space to find and make allies. Secondly, we need to invest in evidence of impact, not only on the breadth of learner competences that are being developed through climate education, but also are we really educating for hope, for justice, for values? Without this evidence, we will not be able to continue to convince governments and donors. So also to the partnership and to UNESCO, you can play a phenomenal role in amplifying, sharing evidence. So please, we also count on you for that. And then I would say to all of us, keep up the good work. We know resources are constrained, but this is too important to give up. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup encore une fois, Madame Segers, pour
Thank
vos
you
mots
once
finaux.
more, Ms. Segers,
Du coup, je vous
for
remercie
your
encore
insights. Well, I want
pour
to thank
être
you again
très inspirant et
for all
surtout
your
pour avoir
inspiring
donné votre point
words
de vue très utile
and
pour l'ensemble des
for
parties
giving
prenantes
your
engagées aujourd'hui dans
sharing with
l'éducation
us your
verte.
stance.
Je vous remercie encore une fois pour votre
I want to
participation à
thank you
cette
once again
session
for
consacrée au pilier
participating
du
in this
partenariat.
session on the Pillar
Et souvent,
2
pour
of the
résumer
Partnership
avant
for
de
Green
conclure le
Education.
panel,
I'll try
nous
and
pourrons,
summarize
je
the
crois,
panel's
retenir trois
discussions.
points
I think we
essentiels
can highlight
de ce
three
panel,
key
c'est-à-dire que
points.
l'éducation verte doit
I
être
think green
intégrée dans les curriculums à
education
tous les niveaux
must
éducatifs,
be
avec le
integrated,
développement d'outils
embedded into
pédagogiques
curricula at
spécifiques et
all levels of
contextualisés.
education, with the
Les enseignants et
development
les
of
acteurs éducatifs
specific
jouent un
and
rôle central tant
contextualized
dans le plaidoyer
teaching
politique que
tools.
dans la mise en
The
œuvre
second
sur le
point would
terrain.
be
Et
that
enfin, les
teachers and
ONG et les
education
partenaires
stakeholders
internationaux
play a
comme le
central
GIEC
role,
et
both in
l'UNESCO sont
policy advocacy
indispensables
and in
pour
implementation
soutenir
on the
les
ground,
initiatives
and
locales
NGOs
et
and
pour
international
influencer les
partnerships,
politiques
such as the
éducatives. Ces échanges,
GEP
en fait,
and
ont
UNESCO, are
mis
essential
en
in
évidence
supporting local
la
initiatives and
richesse des
influencing
perspectives et la complémentarité
education
des acteurs engagés
policy.
à
So
la
these
promotion
discussions, I think,
d'une
highlight the
éducation
wealth
verte.
of perspectives
Et
and
je voudrais remercier
complementarity of
encore
the
une fois
actors
nos chers
involved in
panélistes,
promoting
Monsieur
green
Eric
education.
Guillardi,
I would like to
professeur
thank
Slim
our
Halbous et Madame Maud
panelists, Mr.
Seger,
Eric
pour votre
Guillardi,
participation et ainsi le
Professor
public pour
Slim
votre
Halbous, and
attention.
Ms. Maud
I will
Segers
now
for their
give
participation,
the
as well
floor
as the
to the next
audience
panel
for the
on Pillar 3. Back to you, Cyril and Nisrine. Thank you very much.
Merci, merci Gabriele, et encore un grand
Thank you so
merci
much,
aux
Gabriele,
différents
and
intervenants
thanks
de
again
ce panel.
to the panelists.
Avant de passer sur le panel suivant, je
Before
voudrais
I
rappeler nos
move on
participants
to
que
the
si vous avez
next
envie d'échanger,
panel,
n'hésitez pas à
I'd
poser
like
directement
to
vos questions
remind
dans l'outil de questions-réponses
all
que vous trouverez en bas de
participants
votre
that they can
écran.
use
Ça
the
vous permettra
Q&A
d'échanger directement avec
tool
les
to
différents
ask your
intervenants qui auront
questions.
également la possibilité
That
de
will
vous répondre.
make it
Donc
possible
n'hésitez
for
pas à
you
utiliser
to
cet
pose
outil
your
pour
questions
participer
directly
à la
to
conversation
to the speakers, and we'd really like you to take an active part in this discussion. Our next session addresses Pillar 3, adapting teacher training and the capacities of education systems. And I would say that a green school without trained teachers is a bit like a ship without a captain, if you'll forgive the metaphor. This pillar answers a simple but huge question. How do we move from local experimentation to scaling up? How do we train millions of teachers and not just hundreds? To guide this discussion, I'm delighted to hand over to Kathleen Ng as Sulitest's official representative to UNESCO and a pillar of our Forum Steering Committee. Kathleen will help us understand how to assess skills and transform our systems in a sustainable way. Kathleen, over to you.
Bonjour, est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Hello, can you hear me? Yes, we can.
Super.
Great.
Donc, bonjour tout le monde.
Hello,
Thank you
hello
so
everybody.
much for joining this lovely session. And I saw a lot of excitement yesterday and discussions today about the importance of teacher training and systemic change in education systems. Yesterday there was also a question, specifically about this on how educators can be informed to ensure that good practices are transmitted to learners. So I'm hoping that today's excellent panelists are going to be able to answer that question for you. I am going to just come with a little bit of a preamble. Sustainability, higher education, teacher training has been something that's been happening for a long time. I think the first UN decade for education for sustainable development was actually 2004 to 2014, where there was actually a lot of activity happening, at least on the university front from a teacher training perspective. You had stuff like universities working with NGOs, working with community partners with regards to on-the-ground teaching and learning. We had the Disciplinary Associations Network for Sustainability, which is academic associations committed to education for a sustainable future so that people in specific disciplines can learn from each other about how to integrate sustainability into teaching, learning, research. And, the work continues now. You have universities with teaching labs on, leadership and learning for sustainability, for example, at McGill University, where I am currently working, where Dr. Blaine Harvey is looking for leverage points for transitioning towards collaborative and transdisciplinary models for research and practice. So throughout the talks that we've had so far, we've seen the importance of the multi-stakeholder approach, the importance of engaging an all-hands approach to systemic change, different ways of knowing, land-based learning, et cetera, and I think with this round, with the Greening Education Partnership now being led very strongly by UNESCO in implementation of the principles, I think this has going to be, and it has already been, a sea change in collectivity in our approach. So Katarina mentioned yesterday, for example, about how the GEP is working on the teacher training program. We've had questions come up about impact. So the GEP is going to have a dashboard, as Katarina mentioned. My organization, Sulitest, also has developed online tools to strengthen and massify sustainable development education. And I think our panelists today, we have the co-coordinators of the GEP Working Group 3 on greening teacher education, teacher training and education systems. So I will have Sarah and Rike come and talk about, the Working Group 3's activities and the tools that are being developed. I will then move on to Maëlys and Benoit to speak a little bit about teacher training and education systems sustainability in France to train up to 10,000 educators and university staff in sustainability. And then we'll move on to Paul Walsh from the SDSN, who is going to talk about the extent of degree of resources and activities that they are doing in this space. So first we'll have the co-coordinators of Working Group 3 speak a little bit about the who, the why, the importance of greening teacher training and education systems. We have Sarah Beardmore, who heads the Global Partnership for Education's Strategic Partnerships and Capabilities team. She develops multi-stakeholder strategies and initiatives to address cross-sectoral challenges to children's well-being and education. That includes climate change, school nutrition, and violence. And she currently leads GPE's work in supporting climate-smart education systems, and that includes technical assistance to facilitating climate finance initiatives. And she has 20 years of experience internationally, including a decade as an advocacy specialist, civil society accountability funder, leading on policy advocacy and resource mobilization for child rights, economic justice, gender equality, material health, and Indigenous rights. Also from the GPE, we have Rike, who is a climate and education specialist there. She supports global and country level efforts to integrate climate resilience into education systems. She works across the Climate Smart Education Systems Initiative and the Building Resilience in Children and Communities through the education sector initiative, and she is helping partner countries to strengthen climate responsive policies, plans, and investments. So her work includes coordinating multi-stakeholder partnerships, supporting country work plans, mobilizing climate finance for education, and providing evidence generation and knowledge sharing across the GPE Secretariat and the wider partnership. So Sarah, Rike, I don't see Jennifer here, but you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. And on behalf of all of the co-chairs from UNICEF, Education International, and the Global Partnership for Education, we're really delighted to be here today with you. We're going to try to pull through all of the different work that we've been doing in the working group under the Greening Education Partnership. But let me start with a simple point, which is that education systems cannot be climate ready if educators are not ready. Around the world, teachers, school leaders, and education support personnel are already responding to climate change, not as a future risk, but as a daily reality of their conditions. Climate change is already shaping how learning happens, where it happens, and in some cases, whether it happens at all. So we see this when heat waves disrupt school days, when floods and storms force schools to close, when educators are needing to support displaced learners, and when teachers are asked to navigate safety, well-being, and learning continuity under extreme pressure. Yet too often, educators are expected to do more in these contexts without the policies, protections, or resources needed to do so safely and sustainably. Climate change is absolutely accelerating the existing pressures across the education workforce. Educators are taking on expanded roles during crises. They already have often gendered caregiving responsibilities, which still fall disproportionately on women, and these intensify under conditions of climate emergencies. And in disrupted contexts, teachers are also exposed to safety risks, including more violence. So all of this is happening, unfortunately, at a time when education systems are facing converging crises, right? We have the worsening climate emergency, but there's also already a global teacher shortage. I think UNESCO has estimated that over 50 million additional teachers are needed by 2030. There are growing expectations for education systems to respond to shocks, even though the policies, the coordination mechanisms, the data systems, and the financing are often not climate ready. So that's precisely the gap that the Greening Education Partnership's third pillar is designed to address, focusing on greening teacher training and education systems capacities. Pillar 3 focuses on strengthening education systems so they're climate ready, from policy and planning to finance and implementation, ensuring that teachers, school leaders, and education support personnel have the capacity, support, and conditions they need to sustain quality education in a changing climate. This work, guided by the Working Group 3, is co-chaired by GPE, UNICEF, and EI, and it also brings together governments, educators, unions, NGOs, and partners around the shared goal of placing educators at the heart of climate resilient education systems. So I'm going to turn to Reka, who's going to help us go through what Pillar 3 is about and what makes it distinct.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, so let's move from the why to the what. And as the name also indicates, Pillar 3 is really centered on greening teacher training and education system capacities, covering everything from policy and planning to finance and implementation to really ensure that education systems are truly climate ready. So while Pillar 2 that we just heard about before addresses what is being taught, Pillar 3 addresses whether education systems are equipped to sustain climate action at scale. So at its very core, Pillar 3 is about enabling education systems to become more climate smart, meaning advancing on climate resilience and ensuring that teachers, education support personnel, and policymakers alike are trained and equipped to deliver greener education. And this approach recognizes that climate change cannot be treated as an add-on. It needs to be embedded in how educators are prepared, supported, and recognized across the entire system. So Pillar 3 also starts from a whole system perspective. Transforming education systems to be climate resilient and sustainable requires capacity at multiple levels. At the more individual level, we talk about training of school leaders and teachers and policymakers on how to integrate climate change and sustainability into teaching and learning. School level capacity is about educators and the wider education workforce being able to translate climate commitments into daily practices. And system level capacity to advance greener policy, planning, financing, and coordination as well. So for ministries of education, this means having the support needed to integrate climate and environmental considerations into education strategies, sector plans, data systems, budgets, and also to strengthen coordinations with ministries that are responsible for climate and environment. For educators, it means better preparation through both pre-service and in-service training across all levels of education and across subjects too, as well as the funding, the tool, the time, the trust, and the working conditions required to provide quality climate education for all learners. So what makes Pillar 3 distinct is that it does not only focus on what educators should teach, but on whether education systems are set up to support them to do so sustainably, safely, and at scale. And this really reflects a core greening education partnership, and particularly Pillar 3 insight, which is that educators are not only implementers of climate policies, but they are also co-creators of climate resilient education systems. And therefore, investing in educator capacity, protection, and participation is both an education workforce strategy and a climate adaptation strategy. So, moving from the what to the how. To put these objectives of Pillar 3 into practice, GPE, together with UNICEF and Education International, the co-chairs of Working Group 3, we have developed a new policy toolkit called Educators at the Heart of Greening Education, a climate resilience toolkit for policymakers, which we're planning to launch April this year. So consider this also a little introduction and a little sneak peek to what the tool has to offer. The toolkit is designed for ministries of education and education sector stakeholders, but it's also highly relevant, of course, for NGOs and partners supporting implementation and policy dialogue on the ground. Its purpose is to support ministries of education in strengthening the climate resilience of the education systems by enabling educators, school leaders, and education support personnel to deliver continuous, equitable, and equality education even during climate-related disruptions. And it does so through 5 strategic educator-centered policy objectives that Sarah will tell you much more about in a bit. And these objectives, they together help ministries assess how well their systems are currently supporting educators both before, during, and after climate shocks. and it identifies practical entry points for reforms that are feasible within the context and the existing capacities and resources. And over to Sarah.
Thanks, Rika. So this reflection tool is really meant to be a practical guide for ministries to use to undertake a dialogue around the entry points in their system. So there are 5 key strategic objectives. Then together, these really help to define what climate resilient education systems require. So the first is supporting educators to provide quality climate change education. And that's ensuring that teachers have the training, resources, and pedagogical support to teach climate change effectively. The second is strengthening educators' capacity to maintain quality education during climate disruptions. And that's including alternative learning spaces, low-tech solutions, and clear roles during emergencies. The third objective is ensuring that educator and student safety and well-being during climate emergencies are protected. It's recognizing safety as protection from climate hazards and the heightened risks of violence and psychosocial harm during disruptions. The fourth strategic objective is about ensuring quality working conditions before, during, and after climate impacts. This includes addressing workloads, labor rights, burnout, and gendered caregiving burdens that fall disproportionately on educators. And then finally, a key element of the toolkit looks at how increasing educator participation in climate-related policy and social dialogue can be achieved. This is about enabling teachers and education personnel to shape climate and education policy, including in their participation in national planning policies. So by focusing on these strategic objectives, the aim is for ministries to be able to implement the policies and plans that are needed in consultation with teachers to help them ensure continuous, equitable, quality education for all before, during, and after climate disruptions. Reke, now you can go into a little bit more detail of the texture of what kinds of prompts the toolkit provides to ministries to reflect on.
Yes. So to give you a bit more details on some of the reflection questions, I'm going to take you through some examples that really showcases how the toolkit shifts the focus to be centered upon teachers and educators as such. So under the first objective, national policymakers are asked to reflect on to what extent climate change education is clearly and systematically embedded across national curricula, and also to what extent climate change education and climate literacy are systematically integrated into teacher education programs. When we move to the second objectives, they are asked to reflect on questions like, does the ministry regularly track how climate disruptions affect educators' ability to teach, and whether educators have access to practical reference material and training on teaching during climate-related disruptions? While the third and the fourth objectives respectively include questions as, do teachers, education support personnel, and school leaders receive systematic regular training on managing climate-related emergencies that are impacting students and educators? And do existing ministry guidelines for emergency situations explicitly acknowledge and recommend adequate rest periods for educators to pause, disconnect, and recover? And under the fifth and last objective, policymakers are, amongst others, asked to reflect on whether there are regular and institutionalized mechanisms that systematically involve educators and the representative unions meaningfully and early on in the development and in refining climate change-related education and disaster response policies. I think these examples of reflections questions, they do really show, alongside with the 5 objectives of the toolkit, a shift from the focus of what teachers should do to what system must do to support teachers during climate-related disruptions. And at its core, the toolkit itself advances on one message, which is investing in educators is investing in climate resilience.
So the key for us is now that our toolkit has been developed and finalized, we need to get it into the hands of stakeholders at country level. So initially, we're going to be partnering to test the tool in real-world contexts with the Knowledge and Innovation Exchange platform of GPE to identify opportunities. And the KICS Learning Hub for Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and the Pacific, which is hosted by NORAG, will be helping to pilot this tool. They essentially identified strong demand from countries to strengthen their capacities in climate change education. And so in response, the hub is hosting a 9-week learning cycle from February through April that's going to bring together national education teams from a number of countries. And the aim of the learning cycle is actually to build the capacity of country teams to identify entry points to strengthen climate-related strategies in education. And it's going to focus primarily on the first objective of the toolkit, which is on supporting teachers to deliver quality climate change education. And then through this process, the country teams will explore multifaceted support mechanisms that enable educators to deliver quality climate change education in practice. And that includes improved working conditions, strengthened social and policy dialogue within the national context. And the learning cycle is also going to support country teams to better understand how to address climate risks facing teachers and how to enable educators to provide relevant, contextual, place-based learning that strengthens learners' and communities' climate adaptation capacities. The aim is to get feedback from this experience working with these country teams and further strengthen the tool and our support to countries as we aim to roll out the support across more countries around the world. This is not just an effort of the Pillar 3 co-chairs and the KICS Hub, though. We really need to mobilize all of the stakeholders in education to become familiar with these concepts and these tools and really help to support a dialogue focusing on each of these objectives. So Heke, over to you for a bit more about the role of NGOs.
Yeah. So what's been very clear in the development of the toolkit itself, but also through the learning cycle, what Sarah is just touching upon here, is that Pillar 3 of the Greening Education Partnership really leverages the partnership for maximum impact. And NGOs have a very important role to play in this too, especially in translating the objectives of Pillar 3 and the policy toolkit from policy intent to actual action on the ground. From our perspective, NGOs are essential partners because they support teacher training and continuous professional learning. You innovate in non-formal and community-based education. You can reach educators and learners in crisis-affected, fragile, and hard-to-reach contexts. NGOs bridge national policy framework with local realities and elevate educator voices as well, including women educators and marginalized groups whose experiences are often underrepresented in informal planning processes. So under Pillar 3, NGOs can play a particularly strategic role by aligning teacher-focused programs with national policy reform efforts, contributing to evidence and practice-based insights from implementation, supporting pilot initiatives that can inform system-level change, and co-developing solutions together with ministries, educators, education unions, and communities. So to wrap up, climate resilient education systems are not built by institutions alone, they're built by people. Across contexts, we see school leaders, teachers, and education support personnel already adapting, innovating, and leading in the face of climate disruptions. And Pillar 3 is our shared opportunity to ensure that educators are prepared, protected, valued, and meaningfully included in climate-related decision-making as well. Therefore, we invite NGOs and not only to help implement Pillar 3, but also to shape it alongside governments and educators themselves, bringing practice, evidence, and lived experience into the policy dialogue. Together, we can ensure that greening education does not become an added burden for educators, but a supported, sustainable, and empowering transformation. Because Pillar 3 does really remind us of a simple truth that climate-ready education systems depend on climate-ready, protected, and empowered educators, and NGOs are a critical partner in making that possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Rika. That was excellent, and I think it responds to actually a lot of the concerns and questions that were being raised in the chat today and yesterday. So I am sure that you're going to get a bunch of NGO partners going to be reaching out to you, and I encourage all of our NGO partners and anyone who's interested to get in touch and join the GEP and help make this a reality, because it's not top down, bottom up, it's all of us. Thank you so much. And now I'm going to invite our next panelist. We have Mélis from Sullytest and Benoît Gabriel from Université Paris-Saclay, the Ecosys Joint Research Unit and Biosphere Graduate School. Mélis is the coordinator of the Expandia project at Sullytest. She drives innovative initiatives to advance sustainable development education and skills assessment. She designs and implements multi-stakeholder programs, uniting public, private, and nonprofit actors to create collective impact. She has 15 years of experience in organizational consulting, partnership management, and communications. She combines business expertise with a passion for social innovation, and her career is rooted in co-creating solutions for social and solidarity economy and corporate social responsibility. And Benoît will be our partner. He is a research professor in sustainability science and bioeconomy. He's actually also acting as Pro-Vice Chancellor for Sustainable Development and Societal Responsibility for Paris-Saclay University, and he currently coordinates a European program in higher education and research focusing on entrepreneurship and sustainable bioeconomy systems, and he teaches bioenergy in West Africa. He was a lead author in the bioenergy chapter of the Special Report on Renewable Energy of the IPCC, and he contributed to other assessments for UNEP and national agencies. So, Mélis and Benoît, c'est à vous.
Thanks a lot. I will share my screen. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very honored to speak here on behalf of Sullytest. We work every day with higher education institutions to make sustainability a core part of teaching and learning. The project I coordinate, Expandia, aims to scale up the integration of sustainability in higher education by offering faculty members a comprehensive turnkey engagement and training program. Today, I'd like to share how we transform higher education through sustainable teaching and why this requires close collaboration between NGOs, universities, and initiatives like the GEP. NGOs have a unique role, bridge policy and practice. At Expandia, we help teachers turn strategies into daily reality. Our focus is clear, supporting faculty, so sustainability becomes a common thread across all disciplines. Let me introduce our project, Expandia. It's a flagship initiative of France's 2030 plan, led by a multi-stakeholder consortium with University of Paris-Saclay, Nantes University, and two local organizations, Ticket for Change and Campus de la Transition. The aim is ambitious: train 6,000 to 10,000 faculty members over 4 years. How? We co-create tailored strategies and tools aligned with SDGs. Sullytest is coordinating the project. Many of you may know us for measuring sustainability literacy worldwide, and Sullytest also co-chairs the Higher Education Sustainability Initiative with Endesa Union University and ESOLC. With Expandia, we bring this global expertise directly to universities. Our hypothesis is simple: To green curricula at scale, we must invest massively in faculty engagement and training. We need to make it easy and relevant for professors, whether they teach physics, law, or humanities, to integrate sustainability into their courses. Expandia is more than training, it's a complete change pathway for universities. The project contains 4 packages: engage, equip with tools, train to transform, and then measure. First package, engage. We raise awareness through conferences, workshops in universities. We also offer digital formats, articles, video, podcasts, etc. And we build a community of practice where professors can share experiences and challenges. Secondly, we equip with tools. So we develop a digital and personalized platform, including existing resources, and 3 practical tools we'll develop. First, it's an assessment and self-assessment tool, including tasks for teachers, so faculty can see where they stand with sustainability. Second, there is a discipline shaker to show how sustainability enriches every academic field. And third, we developed an AI-powered course scanner to analyze syllabi and spot SDG connections. Then we need to train to transform. We help faculty design and teach transformative curricula. We also train institutional champions to sustain this approach long term. And finally, we measure impact and share lessons. To make this real, I'd like now to bring a voice from the field. So I'm very pleased to hand over to Benoît Gabriel, Pro Vice Chancellor for Sustainable Development and Societal Responsibility at University Paris-Saclay. Benoît will share why they joined Expandia.
Thank you, Maëlys, and also for having me in this session. And hello, everyone. In this testimony, I will share how our university, Paris-Saclay in France, is tackling education for sustainable development, some key lessons we've learned so far, and how the project Expandia will leverage our actions. To set the scene, as you can see on the slide, Paris-Saclay is a multidisciplinary, research-intensive university, including 8,000 faculty, 50,000 students, and over 200 laboratories. It has a strong expertise in sustainability science and will also place at governance level a strong emphasis on sustainability with dedicated policies, goals, and teacher training programs. For instance, we currently run a one-day workshop on climate and biodiversity issues attended by 600 faculty and staff last year, plus online courses, support for upskilling, and a catalog of pedagogical resources. In terms of lessons learned so far, we've experienced that reaching out to all our faculty is a challenge. Some of them misunderstand our offer or underestimate their knowledge gaps. We are lucky enough to rely on local pioneers, but we need to channel their efforts. For instance, this colleague who teaches physics bases teaching on sustainability on the famous Meadows report from 1972, so ignoring all the work from IPCC, among others. Success factors include a clear communication for our training offer, leadership support, adequate resources, and also innovative teaching practices. So why did we join Expandia? In this vast ESG challenge, large institutions like ours need external stimuli. Expandia brings the expertise of Suditest and other partners to speed up training, reach out to more faculty, and help us contribute to the project's participatory design. We'll test prototypes of training workshops and material. We'll share feedback from our staff and faculty, and of course, with an eye in international expansion, which is the topic of today. So in a nutshell, we're excited to collaborate to green our higher education programs and expand Expandia's impact. So thank you, Maëlys. Back over to you, and I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Thank you so much, Benoît, for this concrete testimony. So the key message is clear. The community is clear. Expertise exists, but reaching all faculty beyond pioneers remains difficult. External partnerships with NGOs and programs can accelerate change at scale. This is why Expania is more than a national project, it's a contribution to a global movement. We are launching a mapping of Train the Trainers initiatives both in France and internationally. Many of you here already train faculty and have inspiring tools to share. Our call to action is simple. If you train faculty in sustainability, if you have resources to share, or if you like to co-design solutions together, let's connect. Greening higher education is achievable and scalable, but only if we pool our knowledge, tools, and networks. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to our discussion.
Merci beaucoup, Benoît et Mélis. Ça a été
Thank
fort
you very much,
intéressant.
Benoit
Très,
and
très
Mélis. That was
excitant.
very
Et je pense
interesting.
que
It's very much
les gens
exciting.
vont vraiment
And I
apprécier
suppose that
l'opportunité
the
d'engager avec
participants
vous et de partager
will
leur
enjoy
expérience,
the
leurs
option
ressources
that you
et
give them to
de
connect with you,
mobiliser la
share
société envers
resources,
l'éducation
and
plus
make
durable.
sure
I'll
that
switch to
all
English.
the
I now
teachers
would like
are
to
fully
bring
on
forward
board.
Paul Walsh from the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. Paul is the Vice President of Education and Director of the SDG Academy at the SDSN. He is on secondment from University College Dublin, where he remains a full professor of global affairs and sustainable futures. He is director of the University College Dublin MSc in Sustainable Development in partnership with the SDG Academy, and he's held academic positions at Trinity College Dublin, KU Leuven, Harvard, and Columbia University. He's also held positions at the UN, the European Commission, the IMF, and the World Bank. Without further ado, Paul, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kathleen. And first of all, to show gratitude to you for putting together a lovely panel and great presentations thus far. And also, you know, SDSN is part of the UNESCO Liaison Committee, and we're a very proud member, and it's been a great forum for the last 2 days. So I presume I can share my slides. I can, very good. So from the beginning. Oh, yeah. So first of all, SDSN was set up by Professor Jeffrey Sachs with Ban Ki-moon back in 2012. Then we were thinking about the post-2030 agenda. That feels like a long time ago now, but obviously we'll be coming up to 27. We'll be start thinking about the post-2030 agenda. So it's amazing how time moves on. But basically, it's a network of knowledge institutions. One part of SDSN is a network of about 2,000 knowledge institutions that try to promote partnerships to implement the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the climate agreement, the biodiversity agreements, at all levels of governance. So inside universities, community level, local level, regional, global level. So that's their mandate. We do work, obviously, which is nice resources for teachers as well, or all educators on data. So we do the SDG dashboard, for example, which monitors progress on all the SDG indicators across all countries. And what I'm responsible for is the SDG Academy, which is like let's call it the education wing of the SDG Academy. And we have offices in New York and Paris and Kuala Lumpur. Just very briefly about the SDG Academy, just to be aware, we probably best known for creating content. So originally we started off with Jeffrey Sachs's Ages of Sustainable Development, but since then we've a lot of courses, 65 courses, probably 5 or 6 with UNESCO, and these are what we call massive online courses that are free on edX for people to take them self-paced. There is small fees for certification, but generally they're free. What people may not realize is that all of this content is in our library. And this library, you can actually download the MP4s and you can edit and repurpose to your use. So there's lots of situations where schools or NGOs or governments are taking down this nicely produced material on nature and society and public policy and integrating it into their LMSs, into their HR systems, or into their degrees or LMSs for degrees, etc. So there's over 2 million minutes of content there that is very useful for obviously teaching how we live, or how can we be kind to nature and people going forward. We also realize just because you create content, it doesn't mean it's used. So we work in partnerships, and I'm going to describe a few, but obviously we work with governments, like we did an SDG leadership program with the UAE, for example, quite recently. We work with corporates. So with Swiss Re, we did a co-design of insurance and the SDGs, just trying to understand financing for sustainable development, co-created that as kind of a corporate run. We've worked with universities, which I'll describe in a second, in terms of deploying this content into obviously their degrees and their programs. We also have a few communities of practice, so which obviously the liaison NGO, liaison UNESCO liaison committee is one of them. But we're also in Mission 4.7, which is a partnership with UNESCO as well and other partners. And we do have a joint committee with UNESCO on implementing the 2019 Open Education Resource recommendation. And I want to come back to that in a second. And then lastly, we are doing a lot of work on thought leadership, where we try to get across that, you can have all the plans and money, particularly in the education sector, for greening everything, but you've got to train people, you've got to train the staff, not just the teachers, you've got to train people in policy and everyone on how to actually bring a community, as you say, bottom up, top down together to actually implement this greening of education in a general sense. So just two courses you might be interested in. I think this is we have a science panel on the Amazon. We have we're doing one on the Congo, and we're doing one on the rainforest, run by Emma Torres. But we produced a very nice course, I think, using community stock footage, etc., and drone footage. And it's just a very nice science policy practice interface, bottom up, top down course on the Amazon. I produced one on revitalizing multilateralism for a sustainable future. So this was tracking Pact for the Future, all its policy documents and outcomes, even leading up to the World Social Summit. And again, it's just to get people to understand what the consensus was. And just to say, this is from education point of view, chapter 1 maybe didn't say a whole lot about education. I think it was quite good on the digital side. The digital compact was quite good on curriculum and education, but it did reference the political declaration that Ireland and Qatar negotiated the previous year, the midpoint review, the SDGs. And this is kind of my gold star and a North Star in a sense. I know there's UNESCO competencies and other things that you can adhere to, but it's just to show you that education for sustainability, it's a lifelong learning thing. It's preschool, K-12, university, labor force, no matter where you are, and you really have to, it's not just, so our philosophy is that it's a continuum of education from birth, if you like, to death, and that it's actually relevant for high schools as much as it is for university, and much as it is for professional development when you're in the labor force, no matter whether you're in the public or the private sector. And this was the statement which was, again, referenced in Pact for the Future. In a sense, what I've just described there is Mission 4.7, this idea of a continuum of education for sustainable development, from pre to K-12 to university through the labor force. And the partners are with the Ban Ki-moon Center and UNESCO and Columbia University. I want to go back to just my discussions here, and I won't be too long. The demand side first. Okay, this is just looking at upskilling and reskilling teachers. Okay, so in Ireland, we have introduced just as an example, a new course for high school or the Leaving Cert called Climate Change and Sustainable Development. It's probably first of a kind. And of course, the teachers need reskilling and upskilling. So as part of professional development, we developed a pathway into a master's. So for example, if you go on to edX, take our courses by Rockstrom, Sachs, Metrics, etc., you can get a cert, a credit, which they pay for, the Irish government, for their teachers. And then there's a pathway to a micro-credential, like a diploma, and then it's offset into fees and credits into the Master's in Sustainable Development in general. So they can have that type of accreditation for the work they do on personal development when they're actually trying to upskill and reskill so they can take on a thing like a Leaving Cert subject on climate change and sustainable development. For years, it was taught in what's called transition years, and it was more transition years, more extracurricular. But now it's actually mainstreamed into the examination process and into the homeworks, etc. So there's a lot of work to be done to make sure the teachers are up and running for this, right? This course, though, just to say, is part of a consortium. We're setting one up in Dar es Salaam. We're setting one up in the University of West Indies. We're setting one up in Dubai, where we're encouraging educators at all levels. It doesn't matter whether you're a sustainability officer in a corporate, or you're in the UN system, or you're in the Department of Education and Government, or you're a teacher at K-12, or you're a university professor, etc. We're encouraging people to do this online Masters in Sustainable Development, just to actually upskill and reskill, so you have that kind of confidence, if you like, or ability to actually feel you can educate, the younger students or corporates or other educators on sustainable development. That's on the demand side. What it's really trying to say is that in the African Union, we've been saying, like, you really do have to standardize accreditation across Africa. In other words, if you trained as a teacher in Zimbabwe, you should be able to teach all across the African Union or even into Europe. You do have to try and standardize the accreditation and micro-credentials, because this is a big deterrent. But also we're saying that even not necessarily the content, which I'll get into in a minute, but just even the standardization to allow even what I call digital or online training to actually come down and support access and inclusion. There has to be a standardization of semesters and structures so that actually these supports can come in from the digital side and they can enhance what's happening in person or on the ground. But that takes a bit of work to standardize these things. And this has to be done in the European Union as much as it has to be done in the African Union. There's a lot of sovereignty over education and training and accreditation, which actually is a real blockade to demanding, if you like, knowledge and to upskilling and reskilling and get accredited for this type of knowledge. So that should be worked on to standardize that. And then on the supply side, we are part of this UNESCO SDSN Joint Committee on Open Education Resources. So this is the idea that there's a right for people to create resources in their own language, indigenous knowledge. There's a right for people to be able to access this knowledge and deploy it freely, right? And unfortunately, there's a lot of paywalls and there's a lot of incentives that don't allow this happen. So working with governments, working with the educators, working with the digital platforms, working with licensing, working with librarians on the metadata. This is a library close to you everywhere in the world and most schools, etc. There is playbooks and ways of actually creating open education resources. And then that is actually essential for a curriculum, because a lot of us think the knowledge is there to be deployed in a particular context, in a particular country and school. That is false. The content has to be co-created. It's yet to be co-created. We're seeing this in Ireland when we're trying to create the homeworks and the outside school examples, etc. There's an awful lot of work to be done to take that knowledge and science that's there, but putting it into curriculum, putting it into homeworks, putting it into accessible education, and to make it obviously in the local context, in the local language, and co-create it by the stakeholders at that level. But we believe the digital transformation can be a big part of that. So that's why we had, as part of that committee, we had the Third World OER Congress in Dubai in November 24, where we talked about the opportunities that emerging technologies will have to create this ability to create this type of knowledge and knowledge equity and knowledge access, which is really important supply side feature, so that you can go and train teachers and deploy it into accreditation and so on. So I'm going to stop there, and I really appreciate the invitation today, and the other presentations were excellent. And Kathleen, thank you very much again. And also thank you to the NGO Liaison Committee. I think it's great to be working with UNESCO and bringing all the NGOs in partnership with UNESCO together to work together, stakeholders to green everything, states and teachers and curriculum and everything like that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. The work that you're doing is so exciting. And you forgot to also mention the latest class, which is the Ages of Globalization that
Yes.
SDG Academy is offering.
Yeah.
So that's also a very good free class if anyone is interested. Yes, I think the resources that our panelists have provided are extremely, extremely interesting. You probably saw in the chat, people are asking for your contact information. So for sure, I think the resources and the training and the tools that you bring are going to be really valuable to everybody, especially with regards to, the whole point about, context and localization and, trying to work not only focusing on the global north, but working with co-creation as a key word. Nothing for us without us is really important for all of us. So thank you so much, Paul. And and just one more thing, just a little personal shout out from our group at the UN Higher Education Sustainability Initiative, which SDSN is also a member of, and UNESCO and a bunch of other UN agencies. We have an action group called the SDG Publishers Compact that are working to provide more movement from publications from universities to make that knowledge more accessible to community and practitioners, for example, through open access, through ensuring that we have plain language abstracts that are available, again, so that it'll facilitate that knowledge uptake by communities and getting that knowledge into the hands of practitioners. But I thank you all for actually keeping to time. We actually have a couple of minutes, so I'm going to just lob a question at all of you and feel free to answer. Some of you spoke about working in teacher training in all sorts of aspects. Do you want to highlight some of the work that you're doing for non-traditional learners, for Indigenous communities, for persons with disabilities, urban, rural, lower resource communities? Because I think there are a few questions that were in the chat that were about that. And another question with regards to lessons learned. What hasn't worked? What could go better? And, what are your recommendations for others? 1 minute, very quickly. Popcorn.
I can jump in. I can go very quickly. But obviously as a university professor, and it's the challenge is, the SDGs, it was a beautiful phrase coined by David Dunn, who co-facilitated the SDGs with Kamau in Kenya, leave no one behind. And, we should actually start with the furthest behind first. But you do find yourself, even with these kind of free digital resources, just thinking about the digital divide. Like 50% of people just don't have access to the internet or to these things. And of course, that's why we're working with public libraries, because we always feel that you could close that to maybe 70% if people could arrive at their public libraries. But it's still leaving 30% behind, and it is a bit frustrating. The same sort of idea, even when we do the Masters in Dar es Salaam, it'll benefit a lot of professionals, and that's great. And we do realize in a country like Tanzania, only a fraction, maybe 3% go to university. And there's a desperate need for professionals, in government, in all aspects of life. So, and you are empowering them to help others. But there's always a sense with education that there's a bit of a hierarchy. It's just so difficult. You have to really purposefully design things for disability or for access or for reaching as far behind as you can. But I'd still encourage, though, everyone that even if you are creating low-cost masters online or building capacities in low-resource regions or getting digital access as much as you can, that you're still doing something. But it is actually quite difficult to reach the furthest behind first. This is it's a mandate that's important, but it's hard. It's hard. Yeah.
Thank you, Paul, for your honesty and transparency. And I'm sure, all of us together, all of us are necessary to kind of find solutions and to deliver the outcomes that we're looking for. And I would love to continue this conversation. It is very exciting, but we'll be in touch. And for all of you, if you could share your contacts in the chat, I think our participants would love to be in touch as well. Thank you again for your time. Very exciting. I encourage everyone to come and connect with the GEP, especially our NGO partners. And I will turn it over back to Cyril and Nisrim. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Merci Kathleen. Et ainsi donc
Thank you very much, Kathleen. This concludes our various thematic sessions. I would like to take a moment to warmly thank our speakers from the last two sessions. From curriculum integration to systemic teacher training, I think you've all paved the way for truly transformative education. But it is now time to move on to the closing session of our forum, with the first presentation highlighting the perspective of young people. I am therefore pleased to introduce Isabella Carroza-Jora, member of the UNESCO NGO Liaison Committee and head of the Youth Working Group. Isabella's work is living proof that young people are not only the beneficiaries of our policies, but also their co-creators. Isabella, over to you. Thank you. I'll switch to English.
Excellencies, delegates of member states, representatives of UNESCO, NGOs, academia, and fellow youth. In the context of the conclusions of the successful 18th International Forum of NGOs in official partnership with UNESCO, under the theme Greening Education Partnership, NGOs Engaged for Sustainable Impact, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the Youth Working Group of the NGO-UNESCO Liaison Committee. Our working group brings together more than 80 young people aged 18 to 35, representing NGOs in official partnership with UNESCO. Our role is twofold: to ensure that youth, one of UNESCO's priority groups, are meaningfully reached and engaged, and to serve as a bridge between UNESCO's work program and the lived experience of young people active in civil society. We speak today on behalf of the youth who are actively engaged in mobilizing communities in support of UNESCO's mission, including in the area of greening education. For young people, greening education is more than an abstract policy goal. It is a question of social justice, equal opportunity, and a more sustainable future. I had the honor of participating in and representing the Youth Working Group at the 14th UNESCO Youth Forum, held in Samarkand, Uzbekistan, in October 25, which focused on the impact of climate change on young people. In the forum's conclusion, one of the most meaningful outcomes was the strengthened recognition of youth participation, including the explicit role of NGOs as key enablers of engagement. In particular, the second global recommendation on greening education called for the education systems that empower young people with climate-relevant knowledge, skills, and pathways, highlighting lifelong learning and vocational education as central to a just green transition. Today, in the context of the Greening Education Partnership Forum, we, youth from the NGOs in official partnership with UNESCO, recognize and value the work carried out by the Greening Education Partnership. In particular, we strongly support its global targets for 2030, and we will also welcome and endorse the key official outputs of the partnership. As youth, we firmly believe that these goals and frameworks provide concrete and timely responses to the climate and environmental crisis by placing education at the center. In this regard, we call on GEP members to ensure young people are more equally and meaningfully involved across the Greening Education Partnership. Our lived experience and knowledge must be recognized and integrated into the design of impactful and effective solutions for a common future. In particular, the voice of young people from minority communities, rural areas, low-income backgrounds, and those not in education, employment, or training need to be better included. These youth communities are often the most vulnerable to environmental degradation, yet they also hold valuable knowledge and perspectives that can contribute to the Green Education Partnership Initiative. Based on our experience, we would like to highlight 3 concrete steps for action. First, to strengthen the inclusion of youth in the governance and implementation of the Greening Education Partnership. For example, with the creation of a youth working group within GEP that includes structured roles for youth from NGOs in official partnership with UNESCO, particularly those represent minorities and underrepresented groups. Second, in line with the second global recommendation of the 14th UNESCO Youth Forum on Greening Education, particularly item 2.1a, climate education within the Greening Education Partnership should be co-created with youth, rooted in regional realities, and supportive of intergenerational learning. And third, to prioritize deep initiatives that allow supportive environment, enabling youth to develop impactful initiatives and to be included in decision-making. Young people should be supported through financing, capacity building, peer learning, enabling policy, leadership opportunities, and collaborative space for co-creation. With these foundations in place, they can translate green education into tangible local action, developing practical skills, strengthening community resilience, and building sustainable livelihoods that drive lasting impact at the grassroots level. As young people, we stand ready to turn green education to action. We call on Green Education Partnership members to join us in a collective effort to co-create solutions that empower youth, strengthen green skills, and build sustainable livelihoods for a better tomorrow. Distinguished colleagues, excellencies, delegates of member states, representatives of UNESCO, NGOs, academia, and fellow youth, we thank you for your attention. And the NGO-UNESCO Liaison Committee Youth Working Group remains open and ready to support your future endeavors on greening education for future generations. Thank you.
Merci Isabella pour ces mots inspirants et merci pour
Thank you, Isabella, for these inspiring words and for all your dynamism and the work of the youth group. In the chat, we've put two links, one for the partnership, the GEP, if you want to find out more, and you'll find another link if your NGO would like to get involved and join the GEP. You'll find a link to the application form. And now we are pleased to welcome Julien Pelot, Director of the Partnerships Division at UNESCO. Julien embodies the belief that partnership is the new form of leadership. With nearly 20 years of experience at the United Nations, he ensures that civil society has a central place in the organization's strategic planning. Julien, we are listening.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Merci Cyril.
Thank you, Cyril.
Hi everybody. Great to see all of you. Well, I heard a lot. I didn't attend much of this forum, unfortunately, but I've heard great things. I've heard that there was a great turnout. I heard that the discussions were passionate and interesting and a lot of different perspectives. So, this is really what we want to see with these forums, is this collective intelligence that we represent, that you represent together at work, and that really demonstrate the vitality of our official NGO network and the unique kind of added value that we have between UNESCO and our non-governmental partners. Because what is really good for this forum is to anchor all our work in your realities, your underground experience, your technical expertise, academic knowledge, community engagement, and how these global priorities that we carry at UNESCO can connect with local realities. And that is really where we really rely on you, our NGO family, to be not just implementing partners, but really to be our advocates, to be multipliers, to be connectors, to be catalysts for change. So we are very happy about this forum and about your engagement. I'd like to thank the NGO-UNESCO Liaison Committee for all the hard work that went into preparing for this forum. And I hope that this forum will also be a good example of other forums that we can do, the spaces that we can create to align ourselves with each other, to have mutual listening, to drive collective direction, and where we can really feel the value of this network coming together. So I would like to also thank our colleagues from the education sector and Chris in particular for jumping in the adventure. And we really hope that it's useful to your work, to the greening education agenda, and to the very already large and solid partnership that has been built around this agenda. And that is really important, not just between us here, civil society and the UNESCO Secretariat, but it's really another way of demonstrating the value of multilateralism, of how when we bring people at the table, we can solve challenges together and we can drive new results together with the full engagement of civil society. So thank you so much again for your participation, and really look forward to the next steps.
Merci beaucoup, Julien.
Thank you very much, Julien.
Du soutien que vous
Thank you
et
for your support, the support of you and your team give to NGOs and the liaison committee day in, day out. It really helps us in our daily work. As we mentioned yesterday, and as Julien reiterated, this forum has been organized in close collaboration with UNESCO's education sector, and I am therefore delighted to welcome Christopher Castle, Director of the Division for Peace and Sustainable Development. With over 30 years of experience, he embodies the continuity and consistency of UNESCO's work from education to health to this holistic vision of climate education. Christopher, the floor is yours.
Dear friends, colleagues, partners, throughout this meeting, we've engaged in a vital dialogue on the engagement of NGOs in greening education. And I want to echo my colleague Julian and others that this forum has benefited from excellent exchanges. As we're all aware, the climate crisis is a human challenge that touches upon every dimension of our societies, and we're here with the firm belief that education is one of the most powerful tools to respond. The Greening Education Partnership, launched in 2022 at the UN Transforming Education Summit, empowers learners with the skills and values to shape green, resilient, and just societies. And by advancing our green education efforts together, we directly implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, particularly SDG 4 on quality education and SDG 13 on climate action. Education builds the knowledge and skills necessary to apply sustainable principles into real solutions on the ground. Now, we have been focusing our discussions around the four main pillars of action of the Greening Education Partnership, and just to quickly remind, greening schools by implementing a whole institution approach, which includes green teaching and learning, climate-ready facilities, and community engagement. Greening curriculum by ensuring quality learning content on sustainability issues with a holistic approach. Greening teacher training and systems capacities by strengthening the capacity of education systems and policies. And greening communities by promoting climate resilience through lifelong learning. So over the past 2 days, our discussions have clearly shown that greening education requires systemic change, grounded in local context and sustained through strong partnerships. And of course, NGOs play a unique and strategic role in implementing our framework and vision on the ground, building policy and practice, empowering educators and learners, engaging communities, and ensuring that greening education advances equity and resilience. We've had some excellent and powerful examples throughout, and in particular, we just heard from Isabella, who told us in her remarks just now that youth must be placed at the very heart of decision-making for a sustainable future as they actively construct knowledge and inspire change. This was also the thematic focus of this year's International Day of Education, which we just held a couple of weeks ago. And at the heart of meaningful climate education lies robust and continuous training for teachers and education personnel. By strengthening their skills and knowledge, we can transform learning institutions into places of collective action, where educators play a central role in awareness raising and advocacy efforts. Partnership, of course, is key, as we just heard from Julian, and when communities co-design solutions with local partners and governments, working hand in hand with organizations, educators, and learners, we can see an empowerment with time, resources, and expertise that's needed in implementing education for sustainable development. Working within a partnership also adds value to small-scale or isolated efforts, and no effort is too small as they all contribute to the greater collective achievement. So NGOs are key actors in these efforts, as they have the ability to contextualize the work closely with all stakeholders in placing sustainability at the core of teaching and learning. The Greening Education Partnership is a commitment to systemic change, and this forum has provided a very valuable platform for alignment and collaborative efforts in bringing different partners together to strengthen our efforts in greening education. I'd like to emphasize the holistic and whole institution approach that combines education, partnerships, and community engagement, grounded in our approach of education for sustainable development. UNESCO remains committed to supporting the NGOs in advancing their important role in greening education, in line with our broader efforts to strengthen education for sustainable development, I'm also pleased to announce today that the UNESCO World Conference on ESD will be held later this year in partnership with the government of Kenya. This conference will provide the space for us to reflect on and celebrate the progress achieved in ESD implementation, while also looking ahead to how education can help shape the post-2030 agenda. Together, we'll have an opportunity to reaffirm our collective commitment to education as a powerful driver of a more sustainable future. And we aim to provide more information about this important conference in due course. Together, we can ensure that every learner is climate ready and that no community is left behind. And I want to thank everyone for their participation in this forum. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup Christopher, et à travers vous, merci à toute l'équipe de
Thank you very much, Christopher, and through you, thank you very much to the entire education sector. We really worked very closely with your team, and I'm very much looking forward to the next forum. For her closing remarks, we welcome back the President of the International Conference of NGOs, Ms. Svetlomira Stoyanova. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Cyril. Before I give my final remarks, I would like to thank Julianne and Christopher for their interventions today and for the wonderful news, and also for the reminder that, yes, we are a family, and this is a joint collaboration and a joint initiative. So sometimes we pause and we reflect to take a moment to learn, and I hope that this forum has been exactly that, a time of reflection, both for the organizers, for all participants, and for our wonderful audience who has been really engaged throughout the last 2 days. I was reading the whole time the comments in the section, and I have to say I was quite impressed by the examples that were given. One particular thought has stayed with me throughout these past days, today and yesterday as well, that we are indeed facing educational challenges. And yet, as all of our speakers have shown, there are possibilities, there's solution, and if I may, there is hope. But if we look even deeper beyond the educational challenges, we recognize that what we're truly facing, as it was underlined by ADG Giannini yesterday, are the human challenges. In this context, it is crucial to remember that all the practices and solutions presented here can and will only be effective if they're aligned with the social and cultural realities of the communities that they're meant to serve. Context matters, and understanding it is the key to making impact truly sustainable. As we move forward to the real question is, how do we walk the walk? How do we translate inspiration into consistent, tangible action? Implementation should be seen in its realistic outlines, adapted to local capacities, mindful of available resources, and grounded in partnership of all sorts. And when we speak of greening education, we have to understand it in the broader sense, not only as social capital, cultural richness, knowledge, financial means that was underlined as well today, trust, but most of all, human dignity and belonging. What we were talking about in the past 2 days is truly multidimensional, and it will determine whether our shared commitments truly take roots and flourish. And now for my final remarks, allow me to switch to Spanish. Espero que esos 2 días son un comienzo. Proclamémoslo con...
It's only a beginning, thanks to all of you. And I want this journey to be a beginning, a new beginning.
Con esperanza.
And a new journey which is marked by hope. Thank you very much to each and every one of you. Thank you that you decided to embark on this journey. I hope that you will be looking forward to the new forum. The next forum will be a new opportunity to share together and face the challenges that we need to tackle together with trust and a strong sense of a shared goal. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you ever so much, Madam the President. Ladies and gentlemen, this this forum is coming to a close, but our collective work is only just beginning. Over the past 2 days, we've seen that the NGOs are actively contributing to projects aimed at transforming education to better prepare learners for environmental and climate challenges. And we firmly believe that raising awareness of sustainable development issues must begin in the classroom in order to have a lasting impact on society. At Rotary International, the organization I represent at UNESCO, we have a vision. Together, we see a world where people come together and take action to bring about a lasting change in the world, in their communities, and in themselves. So, as we lay this stone today, let us keep in mind this responsibility that brings us together. I will conclude by quoting one of my favorite authors, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, from Terre des Hommes. To be a man is precisely to be responsible. It is to feel shame at the sight of what seems to be unmerited misery. It is to take pride in a victory when one's comrade when one's comrade wins. It is to feel when setting one's stones that one is contributing to the building of the world. Now I'm going to give the floor to my colleague, the co-chair of this forum, Nisreen Abdelajili. Thank you very much, Cyril. Well, it is difficult to conclude after all those concluding remarks. As you said, this event is coming to a close. I would like to thank, first and foremost, all participants for their questions. They really were with us throughout those 2 days. Their questions challenged the different panelists and also triggered reflections and further questions. We were also able to see how we can come together to go even further on all those questions and challenges around climate change, all questions that are, of course, very important. I learned quite a lot during this webinar. I learned a lot on this partnership for green education, and I'm looking forward to the implementation of very nice projects that we heard about. Now, we talked very much about collective work and how collective work can bring about great things. So first, again, my thanks are due to the participants, to all the panelists who gave our time to give talks. Thank you to the NGOs. Thank you, of course, to the organizing committee. I'm going to cite here the 3 NGOs who supported the liaison committee, Siri Tivitz Putunen for EVW International, Kathleen Ing for Solitast, Gabriele Druotta representing the AUF. Also, the liaison committee brings together 5 NGOs, and with Cyril and myself are the chairs. My thanks also to the secretariat team at UNESCO who supported us throughout the entire webinar. Kanarina Anayodu is one of them. She's a program specialist. Also, I'm sorry, I also have a hard time pronouncing the name of Anne, one of our colleagues, Oyo Enan. I'm sorry for mispronouncing certainly her name. She's responsible for junior programs. I'm sorry, let me rephrase, says Nisreen, because I'd like to say that right. I would like not to butcher what role is. So it's important for me to say the names properly. Yuan is her name. She's
Junior Professional Officer
Junior Professional Officer at UNESCO, and I'd like to thank Sandrine Atlambo, which is a head of division for the partnership with civil society, and Liz Alberto. She has supported us throughout all of our meetings, and she's a specialist for partnerships at UNESCO. So thank you very much to each and every one of you, and I hope that we'll meet again on the occasion of the next webinar. Thank you very much and have a nice afternoon.